All right. Oh, I need to put a Fugi in here so you can see my lovely other person. Boop, boop. We are on the ball today, people. We are on the ball. Hopefully my Fugi reactives don't mess up this time, because they did the last time. Oh, apparently it's what's going on, Fugi? Oh, maybe because I'm silenced in the group. It shouldn't be that way though.
Our little true crime. I'm hoping she'll
Hey,
be a permanent guest. So,
hello,
oh, is
hello.
that you?
It's
My
me.
Mac is
Hi.
here.
I'm
Yay.
here. Um,
Welcome.
yes, I'm happy to be here. I'm trying to figure out my Fugi for some reason isn't having you pop up on Fugi Reactive like your Beetlejuice image. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, you're on mine, so it's perfect. Like you're
Okay,
right there. Yeah.
that's good. I don't know what's happening with my Fugis have been acting up lately though. They've been crashing on me. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I need to log out and log back in again.
Maybe you
It
you know,
shows you in the thing. It just doesn't show you with, yeah, it's not showing
my
your
stuff.
user's choice one. Like your image is just not popping up. Uh, just imagine she's here, people.
Oh.
She's supposed to be beside me on the table. Oh well,
Oh no.
I'm so sorry. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. I was just
Mm.
telling my little spookies here that I'm hoping this could be like maybe like a bi-weekly thing that you and me and Erica
Yeah.
will come in and we will talk about different recommendations, different cases that
Mm-hmm.
we watched and we enjoy. There's some whack ones out there, but when you read articles on the whack doc
Mm-hmm.
their mini docs, the case is so much more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys have any suggestions, guys, peeps out there, if you have suggestions, about the cases, about any part of the world, any part of the world,
Yes.
drop it, let us
Yeah.
know.
I love, I'll watch true crime from all over the place. I am all about, it's not just, yes, Luca, grab your water and chill. It's not just like North American crime. Like, there's some great crime out, like, there's great crime out there. Oh my God, that
Right,
sounds
right
bad.
there. It does. And I get it. You know what's crazy is that the other day, I always send like people like recommendations about true crimes and stuff, and then one of my friends on Instagram sent me back a little like clip of like a research paper saying that like people that really enjoy true crime shows are the ones that you gotta be afraid of. And I was like,
I
dang,
mean,
homie. I was like, no. I
I'm
was like, I love it.
yeah, maybe I'm just
I'm
very
not crazy.
we both have the same type of brain though. We're very intrigued by the human mind and human
Yes.
what the human like cuz both of us both just for some backstory, both Macy and I have an anthropology, social anthropology background. So, why people do things or how people do things or all that kind of stuff, I think is just very intriguing to us.
It is.
The human condition is a fascinating thing, including the discussion. Like this was a whole thing, debates, and some of the things that I went on. It says that are humans innately like violent, or are these taught and trained behaviors, or are these going back to the survival of the fittest dichotomy that might
Yeah.
be there, right? So when you think about some of the things, I was actually watching John Wick last night. And
Love
I
it.
was thinking, I was like, I just fucking love these. And that's the exact thought that just went through my brain. I was like, but why? And I think that's
Mhm.
the reason why, individuals like me and you like these kinds of things, because we have these analytical brains that are also like, but why?
Yes.
And it's intriguing.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm gonna clip this thing right here you just said. I'm gonna have that as one of my promotions for
Ooh,
my my podcast.
hell
That's
yeah.
perfectly said. Perfectly said. Yes.
Really, we're
100%.
not sociopaths. We just are very
No.
curious.
No. Curious minds here, just curious minds.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
these
Like figure out people what they do.
but these two, okay, the first one I wanted to talk to you about, I'm gonna dive
Hmm.
in this.
Yes.
I've watched a lot of true crime things, and I've watched them from like low budget to high budget.
Mm-hmm.
And this one here on Netflix, like I haven't been like on a cliffhanger before. I haven't cried in a true
Oh,
crime in a while, but this one made me
this
cry.
one is so deep because I think there's so many layers to it. It's not just the fact that this is going to sound bad because there's a time of innocence and it's involving children. So there is going to be some triggering things that we're going to talk about. So just forewarned
100%.
for everybody. There's
Yeah.
possibility that there might be some triggering things when we're discussing these things. So take care of yourselves. But it's also the fact that there's community involved and indigenous people. And I think there's a lot of layers. It's not just about a crime. It's about how people react within society to a crime, small town aspects, cultural aspects,
Yes,
not
yes.
trusting uh, authorities due to wrongs that have been committed in the like in the past against them. There's like levels to this, and the people that suffer the most from it are these three girls and their families. And I think that's the thing that is so hard about the Oklahoma Girl Scouts and why it impacts so many people. And
Yeah.
sometimes my brain is just like I I'm like when I was watching this, I could see this happening in my small town. I know this sounds bad, but like the whole I know we're going to get into it further, but the whole like everybody knows that dude, right? Do
Yeah.
we believe it? Like I grew up in a town with 2,000 people. If Joe, Smith was like, yeah, he's a bad apple, but I went to school with him. He's not that bad. Like there's
Yeah.
things like that I think that what makes this even more like chilling or, tugs on the empathy of everything.
Yeah. So Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. When you sent me this, I never heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this? Like, okay, the story is that in 1977 in Camp Scott,
Mm-hmm.
they found three bodies of three girls, Lori 8, Michelle 9, Denise 10. And they found these three girls strangled and mutilated bodies under a tree.
Mm-hmm.
When I read that, I'm like, why am I not seeing more of this? Especially
Right.
as a cold case.
Yeah. And it's a still active investigation.
Yes.
Um, Still very active, which I want to discuss your thoughts on that too when we get into it. But like the fact that you look, it's really hard to deep dive. Other than this, I think really Kristen Chenoweth and ABC. I think she pushed this because she was supposed to be at that camp. And if you don't know who
Camp.
Kristen
Yeah.
Chenoweth is, she is a huge Broadway star, actress. She plays Glinda the Good Witch in Wicked. She's the original Glinda.
Yeah.
Um, so the fact that she could have been there, but a illness made her mom told her she couldn't go, and the fact that you know when I was looking for it, this is the only real documentary. I was trying to find more podcasts, more articles. There's people did an article on it, but there's really not a lot of information out there. But it's
Thank you for
still
saying
very
that because
active to today.
yeah, when I was trying to look maps, I was like, what? No podcast on this? I was like,
Yeah, there's
come on.
none.
I was like, wow, like these are like the ages, just first of all, the ages.
Hmm.
They were only 100 feet from their tent.
Right?
They weren't far. They weren't down deep in the woods. They weren't like it was
Yeah.
100 feet from the tent.
And we should also talk about this isn't like rural, like out in the bush. They are 2 miles from town. Like they're not far from a town. I think it's like about 2 miles or something like that.
Hmm.
There's farm places surrounding the area. Like there's farmland that the sheriff grew up on right past his house. Like he drives past Cap Scott every morning, and that's his family's farm. And he's not far from town. I think it was 2 miles. I'm trying to remember how far it was in the distance of it. But it's not like it's in the middle of nowhere. Like they had a concrete swimming pool. It's not like
Yeah,
I went to more remote camps than this one. So it's not like yeah, they're 100 feet from their tent. It's not like it's in the middle of nowhere. It's very to me when you're looking at recent pictures of it, I was like, this looks like a really polished camp. Like
yeah,
it's
it
not
does.
like it's a camp that's like I kept
I've
thinking
seen some
this
camps.
is yeah, like I've seen some camps. This is really looking like they had people that owned the camp living on like site.
on
Like
on site. Yeah, it was
yeah.
like it's like when you read about it in those and I don't want to say because of what happened, but when you think about these horror movies that come out
Mhm.
and you see how those camps look, this like
Yeah.
fancy dancy college, like parents put
Yeah.
money into this camp. It's not like, hey, this is the camp up the
Yeah.
block. This
Like
is like
mhm. Like
really well,
The Girl Scouts had well maintained. Like this was obviously a camp in Oklahoma. Like people were coming from Tulsa like
yeah.
to this
I was just
camp.
about to say that. Yeah,
Like this isn't like my rural community camp, that camp thing. This is like the equivalent of oh, you're sending your kid from the city to camp on a chartered
charter.
bus.
And
You're
that's and with that kind of like I won't say like that kind of luxury, with that kind of luxury, the security of your
mhm.
children goes just up there with it. So you think in your
Exactly.
mind like I'm putting in the money for this. My child is traveling states for this. I
Exactly.
know my kid is going to be safe.
Yeah, like
And then
you're putting your entire faith in something like this, and it had been operational very successfully this for years. Like this isn't something
yeah,
that it just came out of nowhere first, it's been the one of the camp counselors had been going there for years.
yeah, the trust was to a higher level.
Mhm.
But okay, I don't know if you've seen the photos. I mean, of course, you've seen the
Yeah.
documentary, but you see the photos of where the girls' bodies were and where the
Yes.
tents were and the area that it was. It was just,
Mhm.
it was. I felt like the girls were where they were. They were too much on their own.
I do think for that age, yeah. But
Yeah, for that
again,
age, too much on their own.
yeah. To me,
Because I didn't see like there wasn't. I didn't see like, oh, like okay, there's a counselor per 4 tents. Like how
yeah,
some, like this is your children,
they
you're
were
responsible for these four.
outliner tent. Yeah.
Yeah, they were just out. I felt they were like on the edge of the camp in a
Yeah.
way, and I just seen that flags went up. Like that was just a very
Yeah.
dangerous for the girls' age. For the girls' age,
Yeah.
100%.
And I do think partially, like when you go to camp, this was the age groups. Because I know when I went to camp, you were going with people in your same, like, wheel age. If I
Yeah,
was 12, it was like 10, 11, and 12s, right?
yeah,
So I could understand that these children are also of the same age range, like the 8, 9s, and 10s. We're all there at one time for those 2 weeks in June, which I mean, to me, that's early, but I don't know what Oklahoma is. And I know we go to the end of June in our school year, but I always find that the States does weird different because I'm from Canada. They do weird, like sometimes
We
you
are the
guys are,
weird ones.
yeah, you guys
Uh,
start sometimes in August and end in like, beginning of June, and we're right there till June 30th, almost. So, which we won't get, that's a different rabbit hole. But I did think, based on that, and I like that you said this because you have that trust element, but uh the difference of thinking back then versus now, like I remember even
Very
the
true.
allowance of me being alone at certain ages where I will not leave my nephews alone like that at the same age that
No,
I was left alone, and that I would go do things
100%.
alone, and it was just okay. And even then, because I'm old, like we're talking about the 90s and the 80s, um well, not the 80s, more the
I'm an
90s.
80s baby.
Okay,
I'm an
yeah, we're
80s
both 80s
baby.
babies. Just
I'm
so
80s baby.
so in the
So
90s, like we were able to do, but I won't let them do the same things that I had liberties to
no,
do. And we're talking
it's
about the early
crazy.
like 77, I believe it is. I'm trying to remember. Yeah,
Yes,
1977.
1977.
You have to remember this is like a total age of innocence. Like people didn't even, this is why serial killers got away with a lot of the shit they did, was because people
Because
would
they never locked
hitchhike.
their doors.
Yeah. Like exactly. People wouldn't lock their doors. People were more trusting. People would pick up hitchhikers, right?
Yeah.
Or, get in with somebody and not think twice about it. They're just, I'll just catch a ride home. I'll just stick them with them. It's fine. My aunt hitchhiked around New Zealand in this time.
Ooh, oh
Like, and
man.
there's some Australian around that time. Like, I've listened to some Australian true crime that I was like, that could have been my aunt.
You know,
Like,
I've never listened to Australian
oh, some of it's
true crime. I've
so good. There's
I
actually there's
please send
actually a
me.
couple movies. Okay, we'll talk, girl. We'll talk. But
Yeah.
there's
Yes.
another thing. Um, and it is hard to keep tabs on large groups of kids. You're right, Lukia. But I don't feel like this was negligence on part of the camp counselors
Yeah.
at
I don't
all.
know.
Like I didn't feel like these kids, again, we're dealing with 15 and 16-year-olds. There was an adult and a trained medical ER nurse on
Yeah, they
site.
had people. Yeah, they had people
Like,
on site, and yeah, and the people that were responsible for the kids were kids themselves.
yeah,
Um.
exactly. Like which
So
at every
I
camp I've been out, that's you know, they're 16, 17,
yeah,
18.
18.
And
Yeah.
and you know, one of them, and I know we'll get into this, I have her name written down, but she Carla, she
Mhm.
heard stuff going on in the night, and she went to check, and I understand why she'd be scared. You're like 16, 17, and you
Let
hear
me
something.
tell you, I've seen Blair Witch once,
Oh
and
fuck.
you ain't catching me in that shit again.
No, I
Like,
I put
no.
myself in her position. I was like, how brave
Terrified.
she was to go
Just to open.
outside.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
I would have been, I've camped out in the wilderness with bears and other shit in a tent, and I've been like, I'm not fucking leaving the sleeping bag, and hopefully they just don't hear me and they go away. Hopefully those noises I
Yeah.
hear, they just go away.
Just go
And I
away.
just
Yeah.
tell myself that. The fact that she got up with a flashlight, kept going
Yeah.
closer. I was
And
like,
tried.
she tried. That was a
Yeah. At
brave
some point
fucking,
tried.
and then she got up right fucking early, and she was the first. To me, she holds so much. I think she had to deal with a lot of healing, but there's no way. I'm just that's, it's so ballsy, right, Luke? It's
No.
so ballsy. Like
So ballsy. 100%.
a kid just like, oh no, and she went out there because she felt responsible, but she's still holding on to that responsibility, which I'm just like, she's older than me now, right? This is
Yeah.
1977. So
77.
like,
Yeah.
so, you know,
Yeah.
that's a long time. That's like 40 years of holding on to that pain.
And still, again, guys, this is still an open
Yeah.
case. Like it's okay. So let's dive in a little bit
Hmm.
into more details about the case
Yeah.
now. So again, the three girls, they were discovered and they were strangled. That's the first thing I saw,
Mhm.
and I read the description of the strangulations on the girl's skin
S
that you can see the
Yeah.
fingerprint in their on their
Yeah.
neck. That's
So,
how aggressive
yes. Like
this was.
there from what I like to like coming from like a forensic perspective, like you could
Mhm.
definitely tell the plot of the strangulation, especially on the one that's going to sound bad, but the one kept alive longest, right, which
Yeah.
was Denise.
Hmm.
Um the fact that the strangulation was done specifically, I think, to not murder but silence to until
Yeah.
a certain point, which is the sad part about it. Like, and you're right, like it was so deep and so taut that
Yeah, compared to the other cases I have, like I've
mhm.
watched and I've heard about the strangulations, um, I I've noticed that the more of the marking, the deeper the marking, the more close you have to be to the
Yes,
victim, and the
exactly.
more intent has to be into the force. That's like
Right.
this this hate
Yeah.
kind of. I'm like,
That's
where
the
does
thing
that?
about strangulation. You're right. That like the hate, like you said, like strangulation is a violent thing and it's personal.
Yeah.
So strangulation either is done in a fit of passion and is very, 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 very personal. It's the same thing with multiple stab wounds. It's a very
Hmm.
personal thing. But you're right with the rope makes it calculated and personal.
It, yeah.
It's
These
crazy.
girls, and the again the ages is 8, 9, and 10, and just thinking about that, just thinking about
Exactly.
that, it's a yeah, yeah. So they also
And
had head wounds as well.
yes.
They still to this day can't
Yeah, the weapon is
identify the weapon that was used on the girls.
yeah.
Now, let's think about this. The girls, let's say it's the girls were strangled first. Why
Mhm.
the head wound? Why the cause of more?
So, like when I was thinking about it, when I was watching things and when I was thinking about how
Hold
they
on
were
one second,
found.
ma'am.
Yeah, no
One
problem.
second. Glipper. Oh, Glipper. Hey, hey. And thank you so much for following. Yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. This camp is
Clipper,
not
welcome.
not in the UK. It is in wait, this one is
This is in
what state was this in?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Oklahoma.
So at uh Locust Grove at Camp Scott in Oklahoma. So the town is Locust Grove. Um
Hmm.
and the camp is Camp Scott, which was a Girl Scout camp outside Locust Grove. Um and we watched The Keeper of the Ashes, and we did also like a little bit of reading up. But the thing that got me about not being able to see the so what it sounded like to me and looking at from a forensic anthropology viewpoint, and watching the thing with the reenactment is that he went in through the back of the tent, silenced one girl with a huge blow, not even indiscriminately, I think, and I think that ended up being the youngest one, Michelle. I can't remember. Maybe not. Maybe it was the. Maybe it was. That's not. She was the oldest. But coming in, hitting one, going after another, and then going after Denise with the rope. Like I think it was a swift action that ended up being. But then, where's the weapon that he clubbed them with? That's the thing. He didn't hit them with the flashlight they found. So when they found flashlight, they
No.
found rope, they found 400 pieces of evidence actually, and no
Yeah.
murder weapon. So how do you find 400
All of
pieces of
that
evidence and no
and
murder weapon?
no murder weapon. Anything that I kept looking for
Yeah,
more articles and as much as and
anything.
like nothing was mentioned. Like
Yeah.
nothing. Like okay, so they found the flashlight, right? They found the flashlight. The flashlight was covered in plastic, right?
Yeah, with a
It was
pinhole
covered
in
in
it to make it
with
so
the
that
pinhole,
smaller light can go through, but
and there
you can
was
see.
newspaper stuffed inside where the battery is, so the
Yes.
batteries won't rattle. So
Yeah,
this it's like this person
it's
was
calculated.
so calculated. Like this. Okay, so they throughout the case they said that it was this person, but I don't. With the evidence and how calculated it was, I feel like it was more someone that knew
I
the area.
I also have thoughts on that. Like I could totally go into that with you, even down to the DNA stuff. I have big thoughts. I have big thoughts.
Big thought. It's a lot.
Big thoughts.
Like a tip came in that her brother and his friends might have that they confessed to her, or the brother confessed to her. I was like, there's so
Yes.
many
Yeah, it
like
came in later that another
posts.
person from town's brother, they said that it was debunked, but there's so many layers to that.
So many like,
Um,
and it's all again, like Mav said, the small town
Small town.
atmosphere,
And there
and
was
it's like,
even people that lied about it and then got caught in the lie that it was other people
mhm,
too. That the guy that they had another suspect, um, but it ended up being that it was falsified and she failed a polygraph.
yeah.
So yeah,
So
that's the small town community aspects that are also a big deal in there.
So
Yeah,
I need to ask you guys to do that, to put yourself in that time. In
yes,
1977, no one closed their doors. This is a hometown that everybody knows your name, your life,
yes,
your aunts, your grandmother, your everything. The most
exactly,
secure town that people are like, yeah, you go there for you. That's a great place to raise your family. You know,
exactly.
that's that place. So you please have it in your mind that this is that kind of case.
Yeah,
And it's a case that DNA really wasn't available, a case
yes,
that we didn't have cameras or cell phones or any recording devices that
exactly.
will help us actually do this. We're only going by evidence that they found
Yes.
and evidence that they found in a nearby cave.
Yes, which is technically also a cave cellar because a lot of people use dugout cellars in the ground
Mhm.
as means of storage of food, so canned preserves and other things like that. So yeah, I'm gonna go back to what Macy was saying. So they found two girls that looked like they were actually stuffed deeper down into their sleeping bags.
Mhm.
And that was Laura Lee and Michelle. And then carried out. So this guy had to go back and forth after um, carried out like Santa's bag over their shoulder, placed by that tree, and then Denise, who at that time was still suspected to be alive with the currently choking still, was then taken to that tree. Um, Afterward, and this is where some of the triggering stuff assaulted. Um,
Yeah.
so she was essayed, and this is going to sound really bad because again, we're talking about children, but this was a violent rape
Yeah. It's never
of
easy
a
with children.
9-year old. So and then left to succumb to her wounds. So there was probably wounds that went on in the tent because they found lots of blood in the tent. This was not
Yeah.
a quick like bang bang type thing. Is that's where Macy was getting into that rage bit because even pictures there's acts of violent blood everywhere and that rope didn't the child didn't have time to scream. Nobody heard anything in
No.
the camp.
Mm-mm.
So there was even that.
That's a good point that you said that they never had a chance. They're deep in sleep.
Deep in sleep.
Deep in sleep. These girls are feeling safe. These girls are in a place of fun with my friends, and I'm sharing a tent with my friends, and nothing what what came was it ever seen, heard, or anything.
Yeah, exactly. And uh Luke, yeah, exactly. We're going to dive exactly what you're into where, small towns breaking your trust and because you know everyone, it's so much harder. And this is something that has even happened here in Canada that people believe because it is a small town that even when convicted, they still don't believe it.
Yeah.
Or uh think a person's a bad apple because they're pre-misconceptions and they put somebody away like this that happened kind of here with David Milgard for a murder that they never committed because they're like, oh, he sells drugs, he's got to be the bad guy, right? But the killer walks around scot-free because of how the small town's preconceptions are. So this is really kind of partially because we have other things that go on to here, but we'll talk more. So the next morning after this brutal thing happened, that's when Carla goes outside. So in the midst of all that hearing, and finds the sleeping bags,
Yeah, really heartbreaking that it had to be her
right?
to find it first. When
Right?
she had that gut, she had that feeling, and
Mhm.
she went out there and she, that like me, if I that's something that happened, that the guilt is for me is like if I would
Oh.
have taken 10 more steps forward.
Oh yeah, I would be like
You
for
know
as
what I
much
mean?
as I'm
Like,
like that girl like Carla should not feel that. I know if it was me cuz I've worked in childcare since I was like 10. My mother ran our childcare facilities. I was always part like even beforehand volunteering, face painting, doing stuff. I've been working doing nanny work and all that kind of stuff. If I know I would if I felt like I went and I had a feeling because I've had instances of that before and then the fact that you just didn't do that 2 steps more, you feel
yeah,
that sense of this was my like the whole responsibility aspect. If you know somebody that you couldn't protect, that you felt that you were trying to protect. I felt so bad that it was her. At the same time, I'm like, it would be her because
yeah,
she would have been. I don't know if she would have slept until the the roosters crowed. You know,
hmm,
her alarm went off, so she's like, okay, I'm going out,
it's
and
time.
she did it. And I think she didn't want to find what she found, but I think she also was the most aware that maybe something happened that night and wanted to see if anything was going on outside in the daylight. So it's one of those things I feel like she's Carla I really empathize with cuz she feels so relatable.
Yeah,
Like she's so relatable. Like I think
yeah,
every woman can relate to Carla if they've ever
that's
minded
it.
children.
That's right. And then Erica just said it here too. She said, I would have hated to be the person to find those sleeping bags first. The
Mhm.
realization must have been horrible.
Right?
This
And
is
then her
this
just
is the
going
scene.
into mhm. And then her just going into like not panic mode, but dig down mode. She's
Mhm.
the one going to all the other counselors saying we have an issue. We got to work this out. Her running as fast as she's ever ran to get an adult and that ER nurse because what if there's a possibility that I can't do anything as a kid, but I need an adult, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
she was the most responsible one out of
oh,
the whole
yeah,
entire case.
the entire
On
case
the entire
in
case.
like she mobilized, she found them, she knew she didn't
Yep.
touch any she tried to just get
Right.
anybody. Um and then she just like led the thing and then just imagine I just can't imagine the weight of that. And you're just like, we don't want the
Mhm.
kids to panic. So you have to pretend you're okay. That's the other part of it. Is like, oh no, everything's fine. We're going on a hike. We're gonna sing some songs. I got my guitar. And you just found three
Yeah,
dead children. Isn't that crazy?
that's crazy. Something you only see in the movies,
Yeah. And
and
like
she's living it.
exactly. And I think this is, sometimes I think we feel a little deconditioned because I think we have to remember that this was before the first like Friday the 13th, Clamp, Sleepaway. These weren't concepts yet.
Yep.
Um, you know, the whole Jason idea of the stalker murderer in mainstream
Hmm.
media was not out there. You had like the most scary things you had was like you had some Alfred Hitchcock, you
Yeah.
had Twilight Zone, which in watching,
Yeah.
in the 80s is like this isn't scary, but it was
No.
terrifying then, like the people would watch that, hi Kenny. So, imagine like it her whole idea of the world. Like everyone has an idea of the world until they get sucked into it,
Yeah.
especially in a small town. Uh, it's very
That small
small.
town. That
Yeah.
small town. Let's talk about that small town atmosphere.
Mhm.
I'm from Puerto Rico, and I was born and raised there. And I didn't live in the richest part of Puerto Rico. I lived in a
Mhm.
place that we looked out for each other. I looked for a
Yep.
place that if your grandma, your mom wasn't there, you come into my grandma house so you eat with us because you're gonna be fed today. Like that.
Mhm.
That's that kind of atmosphere I grew
Yep.
up. So if something went down, I was looking to
Mhm.
the sky. I was tying my shoe.
Yep.
Don't know what happened.
Yep.
That's what it is. That's how it was.
Yep.
So as soon as I started reading this case and I started reading how the pointing the fingers, the oh, I
Mhm.
found this, the rush and the ease to try to get the news out so people could go to sleep in their homes.
Yep.
People were buying firearms. Like this
Yep.
was chaotic.
Yeah.
So think about the the police trying to defuse the situation as quickly as they
Yep.
can to make their people that they go to the bar with, people
Yep.
that their kids go to the same school, the people that, help you shovel snow out of your driveway.
Exactly. Yep.
That is what we're working with here in this particular case.
And you don't know who it could be.
No.
And that's the thing is that I mean in a small town you always have speculations of who did maybe something, right? That's why I say that sometimes
Yeah.
people that are preconceived end up doing jail time for maybe something they didn't commit. Um
Hmm.
or they get a target on their back, which, the cops, that's when we talk about the cops investigation and can get into because there's layers on that too because there's preconceived notions within small town police.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I grew up in I trusted the police in my town, but at the same time, I know how often they went after my brother-in-law for stuff he did not do, just because he
Yeah.
was like a bit of a scrapper or they didn't really like him, right?
It's always
So,
that.
yeah. So, there's things where there's preconceived notions and then there's suddenly everyone like freaking out like who may have done this. The cops are
Hmm.
trying to, people might have been talking or trying to squash rumors, and because this is something that is so uncommon, so violent in a time of safety, the news media ends up going crazy with it.
Yeah.
Like there's ends up being once there's a little sniff of it, you know, they're they play a big part as well with how
They do.
they
The more
propagated it.
media, the more rush they're gonna
Yeah,
have for them to solve the case. The more media, the more pressure they get on their backs.
exactly.
And it's the small town fever. That's what I call it. Small town
Yes.
fevers. And I could tell you there's a lot of small town fevers. Like the Murtaugh murder, we can get into
Mhm.
that the next our next podcast. That's a small
Yes.
town.
Yeah.
Like it's all about, making sure that your town is not looking bad.
Yeah, oh
Making
yeah.
sure that your property value don't go down.
Exactly.
This
There's
is
layers
all
to it.
place.
Yeah, because not only that, this is the town that they're telling, "Oh yeah, we're super safe." Right?
Mhm.
Like we're your, your apple pie type place, American
I
apple
mean,
pie type
guys,
place, general store, hangout,
Google the
coffee
pictures.
shop every Monday.
Honestly, yeah, please, guys, if you can Google how the camp looks, and you'll see it's a not a regular man. It's a nice camp.
Yeah, like people
So the
probably pay
trust
decent money to go to this
money,
thing.
100%. So this again, the level of trust was up there for these people, and they have to secure this case as quickly as possible to gain that trust again, because maybe this camp
Yeah,
is their biggest funding for their town.
it could be a huge
It could
tourist
be.
attraction. So,
Yeah.
you know, and you have in a small town, you've got your homegrown, like like you said, the whole, aspect of, I didn't see shit. I don't know what you're talking about, you know.
Hmm.
Don't question me. There's that kind of thing. There's also, the ride or dies. There's also your
Yeah.
hometown heroes, which we'll get into,
Hmm.
because American football, high school football is a big thing in some of these places.
Big
So
thing.
that plays a big
You know,
role
it's
in
crazy.
this
I've
too.
seen a lot of cases that involve like star athletes in high
Yeah.
school, and they get away with mostly
Oh yeah.
everything.
They do. They do. It
They do.
boggles my mind. Like I think we have a little bit of that up here with hockey because we do
Mm.
have, there's been some
I ain't gonna
bad
lie.
thing
I
with hockey
love Canadian
camps.
hockey.
There's been
You
stuff that
love
has
Canadian
gone
hockey.
down with hockey camps and stuff like that here. And hockey camp essentially here is the same as at Girl Scout camp. You are taking
Okay.
chartered buses, you're going to hockey camp, you are you're sending your kid away, you're putting your faith and trust into the coaches and the staff that are involved in that hockey camp, right? That they're going away for 2 weeks and they're just going to skate, skate, skate. But we look at some of these people that could go pro as untouchable.
Yep.
Like, they can get away with some crazy fucking shit in a small town because a NHL pro, like we put, as you drive down a highway here, every small town that has an NHL pro has a home of so and so.
Really
Yes. Around
interesting.
here. So, for instance, where I'm from, driving down, there's one town, population maybe 400 people, three NHL pros as you drive down
Dang.
past that road. Yeah. Manitoba has a ton of small towns with small populations, very small populations. They don't have a school. They have to school bus to the newer
Out
town with
town.
a school. Yeah, out of town
Wow.
and they'll have a sign. The town will have paid money to put home of certain NHL pro. And that is a stamp of pride. Huge
Ooh.
stamp of pride.
And then here, NBA, NFL,
Yeah.
any of these people here that had that high school glory, that it
Yeah.
was deep rooted since then,
Yep.
they have gotten away with so, and that's only documented things. Because if the cops have been doing things that they'd be like the hush hush, let's bury this, let's not
Yes.
bring this up to media, though I guarantee you there's
Oh
so
yeah.
many of that. But the
Mhm.
ones that we do have are pretty bad. So imagine the ones that they didn't report.
Mhm.
So and they wow, a lot of the cases are like that. A
Yep.
lot of the cases are that. These are like hometown heroes in a way because of sport.
Yeah. Because
It's
there's
crazy.
not much else to do in your small town but sport. So you're lucky if you have like what you do growing up, and I think you can attest this too, is that you've got like your clubs, sport
Mhm.
clubs that,
Oh no,
or you are lucky to have a movie theater in your small town.
exactly.
Other than that, there's just the diner and,
And that's
playgrounds.
it. Yeah,
That's it.
playgrounds.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it's a huge thing to have that's why people rally around certain people that they become these hometown heroes and why it's so hard to for people that grew up doing sport with those people to also, you know, say, "Oh yeah, they could have done that." Even if they've been convicted, which is also what we'll get into in this. This is crazy, this level of stuff. But yeah. So, the cops, there isn't even a forensic scientist that's attached to the local police detachment. Um
No, there isn't.
they have to call a local reporter to come in
Hmm.
who has done this for them in the past, which is usually what ends up happening in this time, to come take pictures. So this isn't a professional trying to gather forensic evidence and standing around, he said I had to walk in that blood. So his
Hmm.
footprints are in there. Um he just started taking photos
Yeah.
and he just took photos of any and everything he saw and anything and everything they pointed out. Got to be, and this is one of the things that I thought is that how many people, because suddenly this happened and the local police detachment wasn't used to something like this, right? You're probably looking at local B&Es, some disputes, maybe some violent threats, right?
But that's
Bar
the most that they
fights.
got in that time. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
most.
So they're not, but suddenly, like, everybody's walking through that fucking camp,
Mm.
including, they end up calling essentially, which to me is like the RCMP, um, but it's for states, which again, states are so weird to me. But
Oh,
I, oh, it's called the OBSI, which is the Oklahoma, um, essentially state service investigative police.
Yeah.
And Harvey Pratt, who is a Native American, um, is one of the people that talked from the OBSI and a forensic investigator in The Keeper of the Ashes. So when OBSI wasn't even there to contain the situation and do proper investigation before local police authorities were all over that thing. I don't even know how well it was taped off.
Mhm.
Um, they were keeping reporters out. That's as much as I know at the gates, but I can just imagine the amount of trampled evidence on top of the 400 pieces of circumstantial evidence that were found.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it was sloppy done because of
Yes.
their not experienced on that kind of level of crime. I
Mhm.
give them that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But the common sense of
Yeah.
preserving evidence
Mhm.
and not having people be like, oh, look, and God knows how many photos that other people took
Mhm.
taken, because that's
Mhm.
don't even started on the articles that I found about that. But
Yes.
it was just it. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to say is it's just common sense.
Mhm.
That's I think at the end of the day, that's what I'm gonna say. It's honestly just common sense, and
Yeah.
I feel like oh, the person that they try to convict, the person that they try to pin this on, you know, everything was tampered.
Yeah, I think
Everything was
that's the
touched.
reason why it
You
gave
know
him
what I
such a
mean? Like,
hard, an easy case. Not an easy
hmm
case, but so much to argue against because
yeah,
they did do sloppy. They tried, but when you think about it, I don't know how much they were even given this kind of stuff. I like sometimes people at your local detachment just were voted in and or didn't have much like actual
background.
experience or background. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're just,
that's very true.
they got pretty much almost a high school degree and did,
That
security at the hockey rink. It's like our
yeah,
football games. And then they put in for a deputy position. Like you just, you may take a 2-year course or something like that, but it's not like a, you know, or
getting
even
your
I don't even
master's
know.
and
Like
your
it could have even been,
PhD.
yeah, it could be even that you only took like a 6-month course because you're not going in to be OBSI. You're just local detachment. You're just,
Yeah.
being there, doing things, paperwork, telling Joe down the street to go home, you're drunk, you know.
Exactly. And this is exactly why when they found the only date I don't have here that I didn't write down was the date of the manhunt, the date of when
Mm,
they found the cave, when they found the
right?
cave.
I think it
I don't have
was, let me see cuz I wrote down a ton of shit. It might be in my
Yeah, me
notes.
too. I have a notebook, my notebook full of stuff, but I didn't write down the time of the girls' bodies being found and the time they found the nearby cave. So there was a nearby cave,
Right.
and they found similar evidence that they found on the site
Yes.
of the girls' bodies. Now, when they describe the things on in the cave, I feel like these were things that were placed there.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation with that. So OBSI Harvey Pratt, who's also Native American, showed up the day of on the scene a little bit later because I believe the OBSI is they might be stationed certain places, but I don't think he was local. He had to drive a little ways to
Mhm.
get there once it came out. He is the one that found, but he was upset that once he got there, nobody had opened the bags to check it to even see if the girls were alive or who was in there or nothing. Like this was
No pulse.
hours later. No pulse.
Yep.
One person stated that Denise was still warm to the touch when they
Mhm.
helped her, which I'm guessing is the ER nurse husband that was on site. Um, but confirmed her uh death, but then based he was the one that looked at them and then found that they had passed away much sooner than Denise, which
Mm.
placed them more in the tent and then slewed over at the time of their death where Denise died by the tree.
Yeah.
um and then there was a manhunt to look for uh anybody that might be hiding out,
Mm.
which they knew, and this is where we're going back. There was a certain man that, where we get into plant evidence, that was under the care of the local sheriff on remedial. So essentially, what was he was in detention locally there. for sentencing, which and for he was actually there for a charge of also kidnapping and rape of two pregnant women.
Yeah.
Um, and he escaped, was found, brought back, and then
Mhm.
escaped again and was on the run for
Again.
4 years.
Yep.
So in the
4
community,
years.
people would see him in the community and wouldn't rat him out. So this is Gene Leroy Hart,
Yep. Mr. Hart.
Mr. Hart.
Which
Uh,
which 4 years,
four
man. That's
years.
like
So the
that
community
again.
knows he's
Think
there.
about it. You think about the small
Yeah.
town community. Like that's yo, they knew what this man did.
Hmm.
They knew what he was charged for.
He
They
pleaded
clearly
guilty.
he
He
pleaded
pleaded
guilty
guilty to the
exactly.
rape and kidnap of these women. And I'll
So
get more
they
into that like later,
yeah.
but yeah, he totally it isn't like he was saying that he didn't do it.
Hmm.
Um for that. So he was on the run for 4 years being held like he was in the community. He wasn't not in the community and people knew that he did those things just as Macy was saying. Um but I believe they found uh I think the search, I just wrote search because they wanted to see a lot of little places to hide. I believe it was only 2 to 3 days after the murders because they were like he
Yes,
must still be hiding
in
out
the
locally
area.
because they had apparently that whole area pretty locked down uh for any type of movement suspicious. Plus the town was on high alert because they just found out three
Yeah.
girls had died. So everybody is looking at everybody. Everybody is nervous about everything.
Again,
Um
remember he pleaded guilty to the other crimes.
yes.
He made sure before anything when he got arrested that he said he was innocent. Like this I did not
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
He said it is because of my skin color, is because of who I am,
Mhm.
that he said that they were framing him. But this man confessed to pretty horrible things in the
Yeah.
past. And right now he's pleading that he's being framed because he is the easiest thing
Yeah.
to go for right now.
And the other part of it too, so because I've in Canada we have a lot of indigenous communities. It's the same type of thing that has us from North America in US. It's this specific type of um thought process and protection within an indigenous community,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to police because we there's a long history of police brutality. um okay, so in Canada this is a little different, and I don't think, but I understand it. I understand what the people in this community were doing with a high I believe it was Cherokee population.
Hmm.
um
Yes, it is.
is that police generally stigmatize Native Indigenous communities and their peoples and easily point fingers at them for the crimes they're committed. That doesn't mean they don't commit crimes, right?
Mhm.
Everybody commits crimes, but it's really easy, just like within uh, the black community, right, in the US, to instantly trigger. That's what happens here in Canada.
Yeah.
Instantly go and say, yo, we're going to finger this person because they're different, which is the easiest
Yeah.
thing to do in a white community. Oklahoma would be a very, white based community with it, but it has a large indigenous Cherokee community within it. But they are not really mingling very well. They don't mingle well, especially with the local authorities. It's really easy to throw a finger, and that's where we get into the planting of evidence. So
Hmm.
Harvey Pratt is indigenous. He is, I believe, Cherokee. He believes in the teachings and all that kind of stuff. And then he goes and he finds the Cellar Cave, which is actually on Jean Leroy Hart's mother's property adjacent to the camp.
Yeah.
And they find three little fires lit uh to make it look ceremonial. Or I don't know any teachings that would show that to be anything within any indigenous community.
No.
No, like even smudging before a battle, I don't know of anything that would be done like this, right? um if I'm wrong, then you can tell me, but I've never heard of anything. So that's why it sounds like with Macy, it sounds pretty planted that
Yeah.
somebody went into that cellar and lit three little fires, you
Yep, I
know?
agree. I agree. I 100% agree. It's just like it was just the easy scapegoat, and that he was the one to do it. He was the one
Yeah.
to be, because of his record. Not
Yeah.
saying the guy is not bad. The guy is bad.
The
The
guy's
guy
bad.
did what he did in the past, but this
Horrible
crime, this
things.
specific crime, I don't believe
Yeah.
he did this specific crime.
There's
And that, it's so many layers to this
there's
to
so
this
many
case.
layers.
So many layers.
And yeah, so in the
Yeah,
cellar,
I feel, yeah.
there is also they find the same plastic tape, which I mean,
Yeah.
it could have been from the local hardware store, but it also could be actual evidence. But it is circumstantial. The same tape around the flashlight, the same
Yeah.
plastic used on the flashlight, which I
Flashlight.
mean,
Yeah.
garbage bag and duct tape. That is what the tape was and the plastic. So it's
Hmm.
garbage bag and duct tape. But then they find photographs that Leroy took while he was in prison as part of, remedial training. Hi, Slanesh. Um, so yes, Wowoka. Wowoka is the neighboring residential town. So I imagine it's much like where I grew up. There's reservations surrounding my main town.
Hmm.
And lots of there's also Métis communities, which are, so Wowoka would be the the um I imagine the community outside the community of Locust Grove of the indigenous people. I have that written down here. So he was essentially in Wowoka. Um and Wowoka is where part of that land of Camp Scott would be on, where the mother cellar was. So I do think it was easy. Like, how could they not know that that's where Jean Leroy Hart's mother lived?
Yeah.
Like, everybody in the town would know. It was like just outside the town.
Was outside, with, again, with his back history,
Mm-hmm.
fully aware of his back history.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he not know that location by heart?
Yeah, the sheriff is
Just
from this
knowing.
town too, at the time.
Hmm.
I'm trying to find his name.
Yeah, I have so much written down in my notebook. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay, so then I think, okay, the uh Hart escaped. He did 4 years, right? He escaped for 4 years. He ran for 4 years.
yeah.
Um, then there was, he went in hiding. No, didn't he go on didn't they do a 10-month manhunt on him?
They did. Yeah. But
Right?
they couldn't find him, which I mean, it's not surprising that a person can bounce around from place to place and people not saying boo when the cops
Yeah,
come knocking on your door. Like, and really, I do think the only reason why they got J. Leroy Hart and the information that they did was because they had an indigenous investigator talking to
yeah.
indigenous people,
Those people,
or
I
they would
agree.
not have gotten any information out of these people.
No, this would have even been worse of a case. This would have been absolutely nothing to be going by. I mean, they might have, they would have gotten the second worst person in their town. God knows what it was. Maybe
Yep.
the guy, why, or whatever. That they would have went to the next worst person in the town to make sure that they had
Right.
somebody on paper taking the picture with the
Yep.
the newspaper claiming that they captured the right person. So I feel like his 10 months manhunt he went on, and when they found him, he got the lawyer and he told them like, hey, I
Yeah.
was framed,
Yeah.
this was planted, like like, yes, that is my mom, my her property, but that's not where I was
Yes.
specifically, like.
Yeah. So
And of
where?
course,
Oh, yeah. Continue.
yeah. Oh, I got followed.
Ooh, thank you. Also, Slanesh,
um
you might have a unique
yes,
understanding because
Slanesh.
you're from this area. So, the fact that she's from Missouri, 20 minutes from Oklahoma, she might
Oh,
also,
oh,
know, or and you would have also been possibly around this because this is 1977 that we're discussing the
yeah,
Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. So you might have even been around that area during this time. Um,
yeah, this, and
yeah, you were
you
5.
might,
Yeah.
5. So you must have understood and known the vibes of that time, of the safe, and people let their kids run the whole day with their friends to ride bike,
Yeah.
that safe kind of environment that all American kind of thing. Like my kid can go play with their friends. They could go to the neighbor's house and spend the night. Or the mother went away, so he could spend the night at his best friend's house. Like that kind of
Yeah.
environment with this case. And um, it's I gotta again I gotta keep reminding people about these cases like that because
Yeah.
they feel like, oh, look, like they have the mentality of now. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, now. It's not
And
it's
even
different.
even now, let me tell you guys, even now with all the technology we have,
Mhm.
I live in New York and there is an active serial killer right
Yeah.
now finding bodies up and down the Hudson River.
Yeah.
And we still don't know how these bodies got to the Hudson River. They
Yeah.
found six bodies
They
now.
need
There's six bodies.
like we just had a conviction of a serial killer against indigenous women here.
Oh,
There's a big thing about search the landfill going on here because they've all been dumped in the local Winnipeg landfill. Um, which is a huge undertaking to find any if he did any more because he's only admitted to four, which I mean he's going away for 400 years even though he's serving them all at once, right? 100 years
dang.
each
Okay, wait.
person.
100. Okay, that was what I was about to ask. How many
Yeah,
victims? Because it goes by the
four.
by the number of victims. Gotcha.
But he you need even with those investigations, even for trying to find those people, unless he admitted to it, you have to have, and that's why sometimes these cases take so long in investigation or are so hard
Mhm.
to because once you arrest them once, it's really hard to arrest them a second
Second
time.
time. Yes, you're
So
absolutely
you
right.
have to have enough to keep them in there after their 48 hours.
Hmm.
So if it's weak circumstantial evidence, then it's really hard. So that's why when it comes to this stuff where they found, the fires and the the photographs, which are the key thing here, because the thing is they put them in the paper and then a
Hmm.
parole officer is like, "Oh, I recognize those. They used to be in the so and so's desk." Well, that so and so is the lead sheriff of the investigation. How did he not know what those photos were and where they could be found? Which they said after Leroy Hart escaped, he would pull those photos from his desk, throw them on his desk, and say, "I will catch that motherfucker."
Yep.
So how there we go. Like they're saying, I don't know if that's speculation. This is third hand from the documentary, but it was enough sourced information to include it in the documentary because this is ABC News that is doing this, not just some like Joe Schmo documentary. We watch this on YouTube. This is
Yeah.
ABC investigative news journalism.
It
So
was
this
pretty good. It was
is
decent. It
yeah.
was it was pretty good.
Yeah, they're served concurrently. So, concurrently means all at the same time because the dude,
Mhm.
if he lives past if he's in his 40s, if he lives to 150, you know, that'll be a feat, right? But unless the person says they're guilty with consecutive with inconclusive or circumstantial evidence, because again, we have no mortar weapon. That's usually the case thing that ends up making it for these types of trials before DNA evidence is a murder weapon or that the person that is charged or found has information that they possibly couldn't have on the event without being the person that did it. You have
Mm.
fingerprint evidence on a murder weapon, things like that, found in their possession with, the same blood types, those kind of things. Because we're talking about before DNA. So
Yeah.
you had, yes, 400 pieces of circumstantial evidence, but no smoking gun. The only
None.
smoking gun is these pictures, which are pretty convoluted to say is evidence.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you have 400 pieces of evidence, and again, map says none of them are a smoking gun. But at the same time, they were so
yeah,
fixated on these freaking photos. And all the articles I
yes,
read, they say 400
yeah,
pieces of evidence. I'm like, but wait, what? A tree branch that's broken? Like one of them is a
yeah,
freaking tree branch that's just snapped.
yep,
That's one evidence. Like they took
yep,
everything, every piece of leaf, everything around
yep,
the girl's body bag, their sleeping bags.
yep,
They took everything,
yep,
and they said that that was evidence, but none of those matched.
yes,
Did not DNA wise to heart.
yep. So we
Because
have,
they ran two DNA samples. They ran one.
yeah, in the
I have
'80s
the
at the
date here.
beginning of DNA, and I want to get into that
DNA.
like a little further down for sure. But they
Mm,
did find a
they did
partial
this
print
twice.
on the flashlight, but it's a smudge, and
Yeah,
only one partial print. The guy must have been holding on to that for a while. To me, how did you only find one partial print? Is, the guy had to have wrapped the tape. You must have found a print. You didn't find any
on
prints
that.
on that tape?
Yeah, and then the amount of tape that they were learning, I mean that they were he was using
Yeah.
on the flashlight. How did you not get one?
How do you not have one piece
One.
you know, concrete from the cellar on that
Yep.
tape, on that bag, on those photos, on anything that partially even matched or anything else other than one print on the flashlight? Now, this print that they're using that's also saying as part of their major is the photos and the fingerprint from the flashlight, which is a smudge.
Yeah.
It's a inconclusive match, but you don't have
No.
anything to put a fingerprint of the guy, apparently Jean Leroy Hart, on the tape or anything within the cave. So that's why it seems like it's planted. And they
Yeah.
do talk. I watched another documentary and read some things that they do talk to one of the jurors. That's like it just was too inconclusive. There was
No.
just too much shoddy stuff. Like, how can you tell? And she's like, then it did seem like the evidence was planted to them because how did you not have any prints on the place where he's hiding?
Yep.
But you have a
S
partial smudge
Slanish.
print on a flashlight.
Sla Slanish, if I'm saying that right.
Slanesh.
Slanesh. Sorry.
Slanesh.
Slanesh. Thank you so much for the hydrate and stretch, please.
Yes, I am
Yes.
hydrating this
Yes.
entire time. I've got coffee,
Yeah.
I've got iced tea.
Yeah, we'll take a break in like 5 minutes or
Mhm.
so that we could just like
Yeah.
stretch our legs and do our thing.
Yeah, cuz then we'll get
But
into the second
I
half of the discussion of this shit.
yes, this is
Yeah.
the first half. But again, like no DNA. No,
Yeah.
there's absolutely no DNA in that place. It
Yeah.
just it was just so rushed. This case was just like I gotta put a name on it. I
Yeah.
feel the heat. I gotta secure the
Yeah.
safety of my town. It was really rushed. So that I again, heart evil motherfucker, yo. That nigga's 30, right?
Yes.
He is shit.
Yeah.
But he did not do that. I believe he did not do this crime to
Yeah.
young girls. And again, his range of women are not children. They're women.
Right. They're women.
He has a fetish that he has a fetish for pregnant women.
Yes.
That is his thing,
And I
not
think that
little
goes
girls.
back to, so then the little backstory on Leroy Hart, which I think we'll get into, after his 10-month search. We'll get into that after the break. Is that Jean Leroy Hart is from this town of Locust Grove. He is the hometown. He used to do high school football here in Locust Grove, so he's a hometown hero. Um, Decided not to take a football scholarship and got married to his high school sweetheart. Um, but it's hard to live in a small town, and it's hard to be indigenous in a small town and get jobs. So imagine his first thing was uh his wife got pregnant after they got married. They had a son. And I
Yeah.
also did some math on this because I was like, okay, let's see how old the son was. But I know that says that was only like, again, around the age of these girls at the time of the murder. So that's also like,
Oh, really? I was
yes.
thinking he was younger. Why did I
No,
think he was like 5?
because had him when I think he's around 10, because I believe he graduated in around 1966. I actually have a full
Okay.
timeline on Jean Leroy Hart here, because I was like, okay, I'm deep diving. So um give me 2 seconds here. Let me find stuff on Jean
Yeah,
Leroy
she got her
Hart.
notes. I got my notes. I wrote everything down that
Yeah,
I
about
wanted to
Hart. So he's
mention.
Cherokee, high school
Yes.
football star. Married young, had a son and wife. He had his son before he first got in trouble with the law on a B&E in 1966. And his son was very young at that time. So this happened in 1977. His son was born, his son would have been uh, around the age of, 11, 10 at the time of the murders. When
When I think
I,
about that, he has a kid
yeah. So
the
the same
same
age. So
age.
that's also where I'm like,
Yeah, it's
so
just sloppiness.
yeah, so what happened was after that first B&E, his wife was like, "Nuh-uh, not me and my kid." Took his kid away,
Hmm.
left. So I was like,
Yeah,
"Okay, there could be resentment created there because after that, went to Tulsa and that's when he kidnapped and raped two pregnant women and pleaded guilty to it. That was like around 19 couldn't get the exact date. Uh,
yeah, I have here
so it was
72,
3
73.
years before, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because he was
after
only
3
in prison
years.
four
So
years.
it was 1966, so it was 1969 because he was out on
Okay,
parole
gotcha.
when he did this in 19, so 3 years. And his first B&E was 1966. So this was 1969. So after, trials take a long time, so let's say 2 years, right? Then he gets incarcerated. He's up for remedial, and that's when he escapes. So I think he'd been in prison for 5 years, because then he's out for 4 years fleeing.
He escaped twice. He
Yes.
escaped. This man found a way
Yeah.
to escape fucking
And
twice.
how he found a way apparently was because he's in like just a normal little state prison. It's not a
Mhm.
very big one.
It's not
Small.
secured like the
Yeah, it's
yeah.
not, it doesn't have high security. It's probably he's been on pretty decent behavior. He's up for parole board. Essentially is why he's here. And his mother comes to visit cuz it's local, because he's tried locally before, and gave him the means to escape
They
twice.
did
And they
twice.
just both times the pearls are like, yeah, you can go see your boy. And he's like, here's a cake with a freaking file in it. Essentially, is what
Right.
happened with this man.
And he
Um,
bounced.
Bounces, yeah, and then goes back
Why?
to Wowoka each time, so they know where the fuck he is. Obviously, and no other crime is happening. This is the other thing. He's out for 4 years. People see him in town. They think nothing of it.
Yeah,
There isn't
he
people
hasn't riled up
being,
anything.
he hasn't caused shit that we know of
He
in
hasn't
that
caused
4 year
anything.
span. So
And
there's no
I tried
rape.
to look.
Oh yeah,
I
I
tried to look
looked.
for like I tried to look for him like a bar fights. I tried to look for his driving.
Yeah,
I tried to look for everything on Hart, and he was just a regular guy in town hiding
hiding.
on the down low
They don't.
from a
I
4 year
yeah, like
escape.
I tried to see if there was any, like, you know, it would have had to be a huge deep dive. I didn't have that much time. But like, is
Mhm,
there, okay, any finger pointing at Hart for, any rape during this time in that 4 years of the community? Right? Is there anything?
mhm.
Um, there isn't. So
Yeah,
that I can tell. So, okay, he did this thing. I think there might have been some rage built up. He actually said that he admitted he was guilty because he thought he'd get a lighter sentence. Because at first, the two women were willing to come with him and were hiding. He says they were hiding from their husbands in the trunk of his car. Okay, dude.
right.
What two women don't want to see their husbands and hide in a trunk of a car?
And pregnant.
No fucking women do that.
No,
But,
that doesn't sound right,
obviously
buddy.
he's not that bright, right? He
No.
decided not to go to college. He had a hard time keeping a job. So he did some BDs to get some shit and sell some crap. This guy isn't a genius.
Yeah.
He's an average Joe that did some really stupid shit. And I think
Now,
he,
and with his indigenous background, with him being saying that, oh, I didn't do it, like
yeah,
I just did it because it's a lighter sentence. Again, you guys gotta look at a lot of these documentaries and miniseries or whatever it is on cases, and a lot of the times the cops push
yeah,
people to just say what they want to say so they could go home. They
there is
say what they
that.
want to say
Yeah.
so they because the cops at that time gave a lot of broken promises. Like, yeah, if you tell me this now, I'll let you go,
Yeah,
or I'll let you see your wife, or I'll help you out with your kid, or whatever the situation
exactly.
is. I'm not saying he is
Yeah, these are
innocent,
some
but I am
speculation. Yeah.
speculations. I'm just saying that around that time, especially the 60s, around that
Yes.
time, if you're indigenous, if you're black, if you're colored,
Mm-hmm.
if you're Asian, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
If you're just not white, you had a whole different experience
Exactly.
inside the police station. So
100%.
yeah, you really don't.
So another thing that I know we're talking about the cellar, but
Yeah,
actually the cellar before Harvey went inside it was tipped off. And this comes from the People magazine article from July 10th, 2023.
yes, that is the
Um,
one I read just before I got on with you.
yeah, so there's actually also a People magazine investigates. I couldn't find it to
Mhm.
download it. I was hoping sometimes because People magazine actually also has podcasts. They did not put this up as a podcast.
No, they didn't.
Um,
Yeah.
but the tip of the cellar on the people's land that were like, oh, this seems suspicious, which I was like, this also seems suspicious because it's just beside. It's literally a
Mhm.
stone's throw from the camp. Came from two local squirrel hunters saying
Yeah.
that there was suspicious activity in there and they should check it out. And that's when they found the tape, the plastic, some newspaper from the inside that they said matched the flashlight, as well as the
Yeah.
photos and the little fires. It it's still again like newspaper leaves fingerprints, people.
It
It's it during this time. Have you ever played with fucking newspaper ink? I work at a flower shop where I have to roll up newspaper and put newspaper inside of um where we put the bundles of flowers in. You put newspaper down to make sure it collects the water and insulates the flowers. I will do roll upon roll of newspaper, and I've actually literally said, I cannot commit a crime because my fingerprints are all over this fucking place because of
Yep.
the newspaper.
And again, at that time, I don't believe people were wearing gloves
No, they weren't thinking about fucking
specifically to.
fingerprints. That was new
So
technology.
exactly. So think about again the flashlight. Let's go back to the flashlight. Think about how much fingerprint you have to put. There's no. There shouldn't be any partial.
No, there should be no smudge because this
No
person, and
smudge.
I do believe that is a legit piece of evidence, that flashlight. 100% legit. But if it was just
It
stuffed
is.
with local newspaper, anybody can get the local newspaper.
Yeah. In
Like
the
that,
hometown.
the
Yes.
person that would have started those three little fires would have used that newspaper.
Okay. My son just ran up to me and gave me garbage, and then he ran away.
Thanks, Ronan.
So I'm like, what?
I
And
love
he
you,
just gave
Mom.
me
Here's
garbage.
a wrapper.
Here you go. Here. Okay. I was like, all right, thanks, son. Okay,
So funny.
let's take a 5 minute break. 'Cause I think my son is telling me give me attention real quick.
Yeah. Let's take
So
it.
I'm gonna go get.
Yeah. Do you want to take 5 or do you want to take 10? It's up to you.
Let's do 10. Yeah, let's do
Okay,
10.
let's do a 10-minute tea break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more of the manhunt for Jean Laurie Hart and more about all this stuff that happened. I have this is where it starts getting mind-blowing. Like we have tragedy,
Yeah.
but this is where it starts getting mind-blowing. We'll be right
Yes.
back,
Be right back,
people.
guys.
Woo. I'll check to see if Macy's back. I don't know if that was 10 minutes or not. I forgot to keep track of the time. Doop, doop. There we go. I came back with some chocolate milk because when talking the tea on crime, you need chalky milk. I actually have an iced tea and a coffee also. I'm a 3-drink goblin, but then I have my cookies. Next time I'll have like some nice orange pico. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There we go. Now we can see my little jelly kitten a little bit better on there. So yeah, so for sources, well, Macy's Away. I think it's still on Netflix, but there is the ABC News documentary called The Keeper of the Ashes, which is what we both watched. This actually all started because we were playing Phasmo, and there's a camp there that I was like, this reminds me, the layout reminds me of the camp from the the documentary I watched with Kristen Chenoweth about the Oklahoma Girl Scout camp. And Macy was like, "What?" And we'd been talking about wanting to do a crime podcast for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where this all came about from was that discussion. And then so we've got the Keeper of the Ashes. We also had the People magazine investigates uh, from I'm just sourcing our stuff from July 10th of 2023. And then there was one other thing that was an Oklahoma, just 30, it was about a 30-minute documentary about two missing people's cases, not
Hmm.
not connected. Ones were teens at the Oklahoma State Fair, and the other one was this one. And it was a PBS video for Stateline, season 5, episode 2, came out in 2003. So we did some back research. I also read an article also by a true crime novelist. Her pod, her her thing also. I can't remember if I sent that one to you, Macy, or not. Um,
Let me see. I have a few things here. You sent me 3 things.
it could have been that one. I'm trying to remember what her name was because I made sure she was not just some blogger, that she's actually
Yeah.
like a legitimate
No, everything you
researcher.
sent me is pretty, like, everything you sent me was legit sources, you know, investigators, like it was properly done. And I also, again, like you did your research. You just went out and just, put the name on Google, see what you could find.
Right? Just
And
like
that's the best you can do.
make it, yeah, because and then I went to Spotify again, tried to find the People
Yes.
Magazine podcast or any podcasts that were covered by um like there's lots of other news anchor things that they put out there that are legitimate. Like I watch if anybody or listen to one of my favorite investigative journalists does something called Someone Knows Something, um,
Mm.
which are all cold case type things in Canada. He actually his first documentary actually revealed some of the evidence that led to um, some of the arrests for the Mississippi's burning. If you guys know that
Really?
movie, uh, he's amazing, and he's focused on some really tough cold cases and has solved some of them. So there is some people
Oh.
out there on just podcast land that uh, you know, do their own specific investigation that are backed by, like here it's like CBC or,
Mm.
ABC, that they do their own investigation, but they need the money and the means. He sometimes does out of pocket. I'm just trying to find if I still have that. Yes, I think I might still have. I'm still looking to see if I have the search open that had the other one in it. I can't remember. But I quickly read over her stuff, which had a direct quote in it of one of the people that wrote a book on it, um, based on the violence of the crime, like how Macy was saying earlier. And I'm just trying to find that right now. Um, yes,
Like this
her name
on it?
is
Ba-da.
because I was looking at the impacts on pop culture and I was trying to find something here, but it essentially said the guy that wrote a book on this, which I wasn't going to read the entire book when we only had only had a few weeks to do this kind of stuff. Um, uh, she had something about the psychosis of saying how the murders were so violent and so
Mhm.
quick that it had to be a specific thing to do with the psychosis of the person to do that. And this is going to sound bad, but Jean Leroy Hart does not really match that profile um, of the individual. And I'll discuss that kind of stuff later on as well. Like, I'm not saying it's totally,
Yeah.
this is where it gets convoluted because we're going to go into the DNA evidence. Um, But oh, here it is. Lynn Lipinski is also an author from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she has an excerpt from the book 10 number 8, recapping a speech from 1977 by clinical psychologist Robert Phillips. So this was the
Robert
guy who was
Phillips.
looked at it during the case of stating that this person had to be filled with rage against the types of these kinds of individuals. Um, and this was what he gave to the Associated Press in Oklahoma about the amount of um, pent up rage and violence an individual would have to do to enact that kind of stuff on people,
On children.
on
On
children.
these, but these are children, and the thing with that is, I guess, the description. I don't know which one you sent me that I watched, that it had the description of the fingers and the hands, and you can tell
Yeah.
exactly where he placed his thumbs. Like, he
Yes.
specifically was talking about his thumbs, like you could see it, and that's like, it's so personal. It is
Yeah.
so, like, there's something within this person
Yes.
that has a connection with either when they was a child
Yeah.
or them abusing more children.
Exactly. Like that's where I think we get some of it that makes it a little bit because of there's some MO, right? But there's
Mm.
also, yeah, there's something, and that's what that um Robert Phillips said to the Associated Press, the clinical psychologist, was that this to have that happen had to be somebody that had a deep filled rage in an association with him to create such a violent act against the children, which
Yeah.
this isn't outlandish. This is something that has been scientifically proven when we see stuff that goes to violent crime or when we see violent crime against children. It's not just like, oh, this is a usually it's a cycle of abuse, right? You find out that this individual had been, you know, assaulted as a child, had a lot of pent up rage. They might go, and then they become predators themselves. This is clinically proven.
Yes.
It's not nice to hear, but it's clinically proven, right? Like hurt people. And that's how sometimes those people process their pain. It doesn't make it good, obviously, and it's not an excuse. But that's what happens sometimes. Um, and also, this is going to sound bad, but the children, it wasn't a rape that when women think rape, we think, you know, uh, rape of a certain way. When men think of rape, they think of rape a different way.
Yeah.
And this was the different type of way rape. We're not talking about um, vaginal penetration. We're talking about
No.
sodomy. So that also goes to suggest that this is likely a man that committed this type of heinous act.
Didn't they find sperm tested,
Yes. Yeah, that happened in
right?
2013, which I
Yeah,
do want to get
correct.
into that. Yeah. Because we
Yeah,
know more now than before about this kind of stuff, which it kind of bugged me that they didn't bring this up in anything
hmm
that I've found, but I'll get into that too, which is um where I'm kind of on the fence of certain things. Cuz there's lots of layers to it, and I think you'll probably like agree with some of the layers that I've got also like when we discuss with them. But um if we go back to the 10-month manhunt, uh they Harvey finds out that he's staying with a medicine man named Pigeon um in the middle of the woods. And these woods are actually this location, which is what I also found fascinating, was that Gene wasn't just hiding out in any old woods. Is that he's hiding out in the woods that like gangsters used to lie low in.
Yes.
Like there's lots of turkey trails and
hmm
things like that when you get deeper into these forests. So it's not like it isn't a place that people can't hide out. But, the fact that Jean Louis stuff was found right a stone's throw
Right.
away when you're in these notorious woods that gangsters used to lay low in is crazy to me.
hmm That
So,
whole what I wasn't sure if I've read it in the article, the People's article. Was it People's Magazine article? I'm not sure. Um, as one of the articles they mentioned that they could have questioned people there, and they
right.
didn't.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
went straight to heart, and then that's it.
Yeah, there was, the thing is that I don't know how much door knocking happened
hmm
beforehand because really it was only 2 days before the manhunt, and then they actually Harvey went undercover and went to a bar where they got the name for Sam Pigeon, who's the medicine man, and had heard that Gene was staying with Sam. Um, and then a medicine man in these types of communities uh, are like very, they're very prominent, they're very wise, right? That's where you go for your teachings, for your counsel.
Yeah,
Uh, a, a safe place to talk to. Like these are your healers, your protectors within a community.
yeah. These are people you go to when things go wrong.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
when I was working with indigenous communities, sometimes I would actually bring in because sometimes some of the kids I was working with had been through some hard things that every time I would have a local elder, which is in medicine man, come in and, we'd offer tobacco, we'd take his tobacco, and then he'd talk to these indigenous children. And he was always available with his door open just down the street if anyone had to come talk. Because sometimes those people, they have a deeper connection within their community and they are feeling more trusted and safe than any doctor.
Yeah.
Um, and you can do your spiritual practices with them. You can do your cleansing. You feel safe to talk to them about the things that are the hardest things to talk about. And there's some hard things to talk about. So the fact that he was just that this medicine man had him up there. Medicine men are not like going to be like, "Oh, we're going to protect you from the white man." If there was something I think a medicine man felt could harm his entire community, he would have gone to the local authorities
Yeah.
because a medicine man is the protector of a community. He isn't just some random guy going out and
Nope.
picking sage. They're protectors. They're healers and protectors. So he was staying with the local healer, local protector, which I found interesting. So he's holed up there, and the only reason why they find that out is because Harvey and the indigenous OBSI goes undercover at the bar and gets the information. Again, comfortable
Was he
talking with
was
him.
he was he I wasn't sure, was he with the medicine man the whole 4 years?
No, I don't think he was. They just said in
Okay,
the
okay.
last 10 months because what they did was they staked out the medicine man's home outside the cabin because the cabin
Mhm.
was a place where you'd go to probably collect things, do spiritual things, dry out your herbs and that kind of stuff, bit deeper in the woods. Um, he had like his local cabin to do and get away and connect back to nature. And then they went to his house. Harvey had staked his house where his wife was at. And eventually they were like, fuck this noise. We're not waiting anymore to see if Sam Pigeon comes down. They would knock on the door, and Harvey tells the wife, tell us, show us where the cabin is out in nature because it could have been easily just a footpath, which I think it was because after
Mhm.
they found out, they all had to walk to get to the cabin and surround the cabin for Jean Leroy Hart.
That's
Um,
craziness.
they said, "Can you please just tell us?" And she wasn't saying anything at first, and she's like, "It's because he tells him or her, you need to let us know more so I can be the one to get him first
Mm.
because that way I can protect him, or we're trying to protect the community because now we now have this information. It's going to be harder to protect the community." And that's when she takes him to where the cabin is. So she gets in Harvey's car and shows them the location of the cabin. And then that's when they uh they decide to do, I think their sting is like 2 days later that they
Yeah.
surround the cabin. And Harvey's involved with it because I think Harvey has a vested interest when we're talking to him, and he's deeply involved in the teachings. You can tell by the way he lives, by how he looks, the length of his hair. He's smudging sage, all this other kind of stuff. Um, so he was tried by government court, which I mean, he would be because this is a crime that happened outside of any tribal jurisdiction.
Yeah. So
So
he had to go through that process.
yes, he has to go through the due process. So um, Harvey is part of the team that brings him in, but then everything goes south from there. So um, and yeah. So do you want to give any stuff on your thoughts about the sting operation and things in that nature there, Macy?
No, I just, everything with heart, and if you just lay everything out about heart, and you just see his patterns and you see who he is, everything connected to him and how they put these evidence out in the sting,
Mm-hmm.
I, it was, again, it was done very sloppy.
Yes, very
Every
sloppy.
everything in this case was done extremely sloppy. And when Hart was arrested, he noticed that,
Yeah.
and he understood that this was happening to him again as it's happening to the two pregnant girls
Yeah.
um
There's no
before.
trust there. Yeah.
And within his community, it hurts that they had to do it this way. But again, medicine man, anyone inside of the tribal community have to look out for their people and make sure that nothing is poked
Yeah.
around and in their business and what they do.
Mhm.
But yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry. I just this heart, I
Yeah.
really feel in my heart and soul that this man is innocent.
Yeah, like I
And I
do think that the only reason why that they had anything concrete or were even able to do anything is because Harvey was a good officer. The
yeah,
only one out of all those people in the time of that I could tell that wasn't a total D-bag, and we'll get
it
into
was not.
even that, was Hart. Because he had
Was
an
yeah,
vested interest in his community, and he actually wanted to see proper justice, even if it was someone from within his community. But he
community. Yeah,
wanted
I
the
agree with
right
that.
justice. And
Hmm.
he's the only one that was even like, "Why haven't you checked the bags? Why have you not done this?" And when he found the fires in the cellar, he's like, "Please don't let this be an indigenous man. Please, oh please, oh please." And when it was, he tried his damnness to make sure it was done the best way he possibly could. And now he's not the leading investigator. He is just an
No,
investigator. He is just there representing OBSI. And he's the one that got them any of
and
their
their
information.
community.
Yeah, in their
He's
community.
protecting their community, and then the
Yep.
investigators from the town, from the camp, are doing their investigating, but
Yep.
their own. They're looking. Everybody's looking out for each other's backs. That's
Yes.
it. That is like your town is your town, my tribe is my tribe. But
Yeah.
the investigation within the tribe, the way that
Yeah.
officer went in undercover, that was that was done right.
Yeah.
That was done to find out the honest truth and to make sure that your own
Yes.
community wasn't being blamed for it.
And exactly. And he also, him going forward to the wife at the door, I think was so good. He wasn't involved in, he found evidence, but I think the reason why I worried that Harvey was used a little bit because he is the one that they pin on for being outside the community as the viable resource, right?
Yeah.
I do think he thinks that Jean Leroy Hart may have been involved or some way, or that because he was
So he
definitely
knows
very
something.
upset that, he was found not guilty. But
Mhm.
I think he also knew that this wasn't a good man. And he was trying to
Yeah.
protect the community and bring a man
Yeah.
that wasn't a good man to
And I
justice
get
in
that.
some way.
Oh, I get that 100%. I get that some people in this system, and I'm talking about America here.
Mhm.
And this
Mhm.
system, some really effed up people just walk
Yep.
away, and you're like, what the
You're just
actual.
right. Your brain is just blown.
Yes, and you're like trying to figure this out, and then as an officer in a community
Yep.
that you already know is fragile, you already know is real
Mhm.
quick to be put to blame, you know it's real quick to be put down and not
Yep.
respected in other places, and you as an officer, you're just trying to find your best way. And again, who is the worst person in their community? A person
Mhm.
that escaped from jail twice and is hiding.
Yeah. Like even the fact that Harvey, even though we're not, 100% on certain things or whatever his thoughts might have been on the case, right?
Mhm.
You know, we're not speaking to that, but we can talk that Harvey was a true and decent officer that saw a person that, regardless, there was a guy that was at large that created heinous crimes
Mhm.
that was still at large that he brought back. He brought back, not these other fucking sheriffs that I'll get that motherfucking son of a bitch. Like
Mhm.
like that are freaking paper pushers that like to sit behind desks. He connected with his community. He got the information. He brought a guy at large back to serve time. In
Yeah,
any regard,
I'm
I don't know if
wondering.
if it that ever would have
Yeah, I'm
happened without
wondering
him.
with him, with like the view of him protecting his community. Yes. Do you feel like he might have gotten a little bit more of a push from the sheriffs and from them to find the person
I
for
don't
them
think
instead of
I don't think so. I think there might have been a little bit because they decided, right? They decided he will go undercover, but he
Yeah,
took to the challenge. I think he is very moral coded and also
gotcha.
wanted to help in any way that he could. I don't think that he would have been the type that he's like, I know what happened. I feel like also this is a shit show, right? I think he knew it was a shit
It
show.
was. It was a fucking
By
shit
the
show.
time he showed up and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Right?
Like, yeah, like, why are you standing there? Why are you touching that?
Yeah.
What the fuck is
Why
going
haven't you
on
checked this?
here?
Why are you doing this? Why
What?
are you doing that? Like he
Yeah.
showed like when he showed up, 3 hours later or however many hours later, he he was he's to me the only credible person in this entire investigation. Hands down. Because there's also the DA, because they also went and asked the family of Laura Lee Farmer, actually asked to oust the DA when it came to the district attorney when it came to sentencing, because they already have found out this DA that was all over the media had already been leaking information to the media and had already signed a book deal before the trial had even began.
Yeah.
So how can you have that guy who is also not a crimes lawyer for any type of crime other than business crime. So he like protects or goes after people that embezzle, which he is an embezzler
Himself.
himself. He was already taking money on the side for information and already had signed a contract book deal. Like how
That's
is
how
that a
messy it is.
credible representation for these children?
Yep.
He was talking shit about Jean Leroy Hart and had already signed a book deal. So this is where everything starts going like wacko. When they bring Jean Leroy Hart in, they start taking photos of him. The
Hmm.
police officers like they caught a trophy. Big no no.
Yep.
So that came up in court, which also was more fuel for the fire. But they did. I believe it was. I think it was. Um, Harvey Pratt that talked to Sam Pigeon after Sam Pigeon was never brought in, even for aiding and abetting a criminal. So
Yeah.
just to be aware of that, he was never charged, never brought in. And Pratt was talking to, I believe it was Pratt that talked to Sam Pigeon, and he stated that in all the time through their teachings and talking, he said that he talked about the murders, but always feigned innocence. He always didn't have extra information. He just talked about it because I think he knew they were after him. Obviously, he's hiding for 10 months, right?
Yeah.
But he never admitted anything. And I think he would have, as the medicine man, after him going in and getting caught, would have said, yes, he did say something, right?
Yeah, of course. He would have said it again, like you said, he is the protector
Mm-hmm.
of his community. He would definitely would have said if this man would have done something. There's no reason for him to protect him in that level if he has such a big community to protect already.
Exactly. So he said, like, he just talked about it. But
Yeah.
always stated the discussions were never anything that could implement him in the crime. And that he
Mhm.
always stated that he was innocent. He never would have touched the girls. And I mean, it makes sense to me because, again, he had a son the same age.
Yeah. And he doesn't have no patterns of ever
Yeah, like of
doing
children.
towards children.
Did
None.
There is some evidence that in the investigation that follows, like when we're looking into Mike Reed, who is now currently investigating, that there is some things that lined up, but there is there's still pretty big gaps in a lot of things.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, let's put this whole case has too many holes.
yeah.
Way too many holes.
So
This
he ends up getting two um lawyers. One is actually an indigenous rights lawyer,
Mhm.
and the community actually also got another lawyer. Which I mean, I've in some of the when I was watching the PBS stuff, that lawyer totally knows how to spin a yarn, though. I could see why he's a good criminal defense lawyer because There is. I'm like, oh man, yeah. It's like, oh, the fingerprint. It was like, it didn't. Well, yeah,
He's
we can't
I
say it
call him
didn't.
a
Yeah.
yeah, I call him a razzle dazzle lawyer.
Yes.
He razzle dazzles. That's what I call those kind of lawyers. He knows how to spin that shit good.
Yeah, he does. He's got charisma. He knows how to spin it. He knows how to take, so yeah, okay, yeah, they have a partial print. And the partial print does, but it's inconclusive. That's inconclusive.
Yeah.
He's very good at making you have enough charisma or having charisma to have enough doubt in your mind that something that this person didn't do something. Why I'm not actually when I'm talking about the stuff that I feel with Jean Leroy Hart, I'm not using that lawyer. I watched the lawyer type stuff afterward. I am making it based on looking objectively at evidence. Lawyers are
Hmm.
meant, criminal lawyers, and usually criminal lawyers after the fact, this is going to say, they'll be like, yeah, that guy, that fucker did it, but I got a job.
Yeah.
you know,
But I got a
I
job to
got a
do.
job to do. The guy's dead, and he's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
insistent that his guy was innocent.
yeah.
So that's another thing because Jean Leroy Hart, wherever we look at it as karma or whatever, did pass away um, shortly after the trial.
Yeah. 2 months after the trial, he
Yeah,
died at the yard. He had a
yeah,
heart attack.
had a heart attack in the yard. Um,
Hmm.
and there's also one thing that I wanted to point out, when we get to some of these things, is that there was also a lot of mysticism going around Leroy Hart with, the fact that he even found it, and the medicine man stuff also kind of adds into that. So for instance, when they were
Hmm.
doing during that 10 month, when they brought in out of state dogs, that the scent, they would follow the scent. They had a scent from like this was at the very beginning of the because we're not talking cadaver dogs, we're talking search dogs.
First, yeah.
Uh, they followed the scent from the tent. I believe this was in like 3 or 4 days after the stuff occurred, and they followed a strong scent, and then suddenly would stop, like the man had disappeared in thin air. So there was mysticism around already. So this is where we get into like maybe some people did take these for horror stuff, for influence from their movies like Friday the 13th, because suddenly, how does a man disappear into thin air? And then we have the whole thing with the Native American heritage where they're like, well, maybe it's a shapeshifter, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's mysticism that surrounds this. How do dogs have such a strong scent get to, but then they're like, oh well, Jean Leroy Hart was hiding for so long, maybe, he just knows how to get rid of his scent. And,
Yeah, because now he's good at all of that all of a sudden.
yeah, like suddenly he knew to roll around and shit or something like that. It's just so
Yeah.
silly. But
They're
yeah,
like, he's
there's
from
an element.
McMiffin.
Yeah, there's like an element of mysticism that they'd get into a field and suddenly the scent was gone. Now, it could have been just 4 days later, the scent was gone. It
Yeah.
was long grass, it had blown away, whatever, and that's why it was on them. I am a big believer in dogs. Cadaver dogs, especially, I think need to be given more credit for how many crimes they have solved.
Yes.
Um, but they're still considered circumstantial. But dogs, there was something else going on. I think they were on the right scent. I don't know what direction those dogs took them in. If it was towards the cellar, they never stayed.
No, they never state it was north, south, how many
Yeah.
yards, or it just says nearby.
Yeah, they
It says
just
it's
yeah,
just
it
nearby.
just nearby and then suddenly poof, scent's gone. So
And that's it.
mysticism is surrounding this. We've got a medicine man and then suddenly the man dies in the yard 2 months after sentence. Like this is
Yeah.
the thing. He was found not guilty, people, but that didn't mean he still wasn't going to jail. He still had to serve 300
Verb
years.
for his other
300 years for
stuff
his other shit and being on the run for that long. So who wouldn't just say, "Yeah, I did it."
and just be like added to whatever it is already happening right now. 300 years.
Yeah, I'm
So,
going to serve 300 years, and he died 2 months later. And even now, people say there's still mystical things that happen around his gravesite. Ooh, spooky. October.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I know I'm going on tangents. I feel bad, man. I'm just talking so much, Macy, and I'm like, let me just get my notes out. This is the stuff that I just find is so crazy that went off
No,
the
yeah.
fucking rails.
Yeah, I think that just it's just 2 months after. 2 months. And I read that. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Are,
Yeah.
what?
Just working out
What
in the yard.
happened?
Fucking has a heart
And
attack.
he had a heart attack. I'm gonna put in
Yeah.
quotations.
Yeah, see, that's the
Heart
other thing
attack.
is people believe that he was poisoned in prison.
Yeah, I read
But
that too.
then Harvey, after they find out that he died, Harvey looked into it, talked to his mother, and found out his brother also died around this, actually earlier in his 30s of a heart condition, and that he actually had. I actually wrote down how much of his heart was actually working. It was only like 89 on one valve and 90 something on the other.
Damn,
That was blah.
girl, you went.
Yeah, I went
So
deep.
let's talk about this. This is Mav's case. He picked this case. He went in.
I
Okay.
go in.
He put my notes to shame. Right?
I have
Next time, I'm gonna have 6 pages instead of 3.
Oh,
Okay?
I have
Watch me.
13 double-sided. I have 13 pages double-sided written.
She beat me.
I'm like
She beat
flipping
me
through.
hard.
But yeah, it was like uh something like 89% and 90 something percent in the other. And Harvey went back actually because there was so much mysticism surrounding it because people were like, "Ooh, because the town has a ton of conspiracy theories."
That's how small
Um
towns are, though.
Exactly. So,
Oh, they.
obviously it was an inside job, which, like Macy said, you can't disclose that not think that it might not have been an inside job. These things are known to happen, but there's also autopsy that shows that he did have blockages in both major arteries, and that the mother did confirm to Harvey that he did actually have there's a pre-existing condition within, and his brother died of the same thing earlier on in his life in his 30s,
I mean, that man's been hiding for 4 years, and then he gets taken
right?
for murder, and then goes in hiding for another 10 months. A little
Yeah,
stress, and then he went to work out, and
right?
straight up had a straight up. Oh, he did
And
all of this before,
right?
all of this, and he dies from a freaking heart attack, man.
Exactly. And you're right, like the stress of that 10 months of 4 years, right? Who knows what he was eating, what he could be eating, how much
Listen,
exercise he could be getting.
I have such bad anxiety. I have bad anxiety, and it gotten worse because of COVID. It gotten a lot worse. And as me
Mhm.
as a lupus person of lupus, and me going like this to germs everywhere I freaking go, XX get away germs.
Yep.
My heart pumps. I get a little stressed out. Now imagine
Mhm.
me in hiding, making sure nobody finds me for 10 freaking months
Right? Always
like
looking
that,
over your
and like,
shoulder, making sure nobody, you could never trust somebody
oh
wholly,
man,
right? Like you can trust certain people within your community, but how
to
much
an
people are you
extent.
trusting? Yeah. That
Besides your mama,
exactly. Like that you're not going to like fuck me over, you know? I'm at, you can't
mm,
develop any close bonds with anybody because what if you make them angry so they just turn you in?
yeah, they'd be start snitching you out, having a couple of
Yeah.
beers.
Exactly. Like
No,
I
see,
can't even imagine like with siblings and cousins. And that's the thing about indigenous communities. Your families aren't, you know, really small units. And I think like,
Po-
you
you
can
you
relate
we all
to how
know
that
that.
is, right?
Listen, I'm Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
I have like 30 cousins, and I have like 25 nieces and nephews.
Yeah. Like that, and you're all connected, you're all seeing each
we're
other, you're all like,
we're in each
yeah.
other's business,
Mhm.
but we always look out for each other and look out for the benefit of the doubt. We
Yeah.
always do, because life happens, and life takes people emotionally and mentally to so many different challenges, and such a roller coaster that you never know how the person's thinking at that point in
Exactly.
time. But I'm gonna keep saying, I think Hart is innocent. I'm gonna say that
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, and I'm going to get into like that kind of stuff too. Like there's just so many things that looking at, again, this is going back even to my own degree, right? And looking at other things like that. Yeah, it's like a network. And just the human conditioning and understanding of the human mind and science as we know today, right? Which I'm going to go
Mhm.
back to that. So, um, Joyce Payne is I just wanted to talk about Joyce Payne, who is one of the people that testified because he was tried in his county. Um, oh no, Joyce Payne was the one that said about the other person that was a possible suspect during the trial, which is William
Yeah.
Stevens or Bill Stevens. So they aren't
Thanks.
just
It's
going
Bill
after
Stevens. Yeah.
Gene Leroy Hart, but they're focusing on him hard. Also came forward, and that was part of the testimony, and she had testified that, you know, that it was a possibility that it wasn't him, right?
Hmm.
Because there's a ton of testimony that went out, tons of evidence that like this wasn't a small trial. It was huge. They went over every single thing. But after Joyce Payne had testified, they found that she had fabricated the story and lied on a polygraph. And they found that William, even though he was seen near the camp apparently, they said that they saw him near the camp with scratches on his arms and red stains on his boots, which again, we've never found any clothes evidence. There was never any
Nothing.
distinct markings. They didn't take any fingernail scrapings, because they didn't
They did
think
none
about
of
that
that.
kind of stuff. None of that.
Because the
So, yeah,
hometown stuff. They're like, ah, I had a beer with his dad
right.
the other day. He's
They
good.
That actually, Slanesh, you bring up a good point, which in a small town, you can't get a fair trial. The thing about it, though, the families did go forward, and the DA from Tulsa saying, can we please go and have it? Because we don't know if there'd be a fair trial. The indigenous, this is where the indigenous stuff gets interesting. Because of the indigenous aspect, the other side fought that he would get the fairest trial
Yeah.
because he needs indigenous representation from his or indigenous Cherokee representation to be on the trial, because everybody else is just going to see him as a native person, indigenous
Yeah.
person in America from a white man's eyes. And they're right. It is a big thing that we even deal with here, is that when we look at indigenous people that are going up against for crimes that they had committed, who are their peers? It's not white people.
No.
You have to be
It's their own.
tried
Their
in
own.
front of a group of peers to make their decision.
A
And
hundred
that's what
percent.
made it so that it went back to being in the community. And they purposefully said, and this is, they don't think that the jurors' selection was unfair. They actually picked the most impartial, best representation for being in that trial that they could within that community. And they thought, and within the ABC documentary, they actually do think that they did a bang up job selecting the jurors. It only took the jury 5 hours to deliberate and come back with not guilty on all three counts.
Mm.
Um, and that is
To be
based
fair,
on,
that's such so much pressure, man. That's
right?
so much. Like your decision, how you feel, how you see the evidence is gonna determine if this person
Right, exactly.
gets to walk the streets again or gets locked up
Yeah,
for, well, he's already there for 300 years. There's not really
right,
more you can add to that
exactly,
shit.
exactly. So even though not guilty, he still got sentenced by the judge for 300 years, went back to McAllister Penitentiary, and then collapsed in the yard 3 months later after trial and died. And that's where
Fishy
the
as fuck for
computers,
sure.
yeah. And yeah, I just found the blockage. It was
Yeah.
96% in one and 86% in the other that his heart was blocked. So he was only
Jeez.
running on, a fraction of power. So if he was
Dang.
exercising, he just dropped dead in the yard. Um, but you have to look at the um he did from the local penitentiary when he was waiting on parole sentencing. So he was in light lockup when he was
Okay.
able to get out when his first time around. This was a
He
high
was like,
penitentiary. This is McAllister. It's a higher penitentiary prison. So he wasn't getting out and he wasn't looking to get out. He was there acknowledging that he'd get his 300 years. He was found, but he never admitted to being guilty of the trial. And you can actually even see the only thing that really pissed me off too was a bit during this trial was the media, and they know again this is where that lawyer, sneaky lawyer, did a media conference because I think they did want to show empathy within the community and sway public opinion. The
I saw
jurors
that
did
video.
not see it, but
Oh, they did it?
no, the jurors did not see this interview. They were cut off from,
Oh.
so it did not, so this was just for the general public. We know
You
he's
know what?
not
That's
going back into general public, but they wanted to do this anyway, right? But where it gets
yeah.
really fucked up is that now you have people accosting the people that live in the community that their child had died, saying, he's not guilty, right? That's
Mm.
fucked up. Going to
Yeah.
the mom of a dead kid and being like, the guy they're trying, and the mom was just like, I don't know either way who did it, but someone did it. And if it was him, he should go to jail, you
Yeah.
know?
As a parent is thinking for
Right.
to bring justice for the child, of course, 100%.
Imagine grieving over your kid and people accosting you at work saying, fuck you. Your child's dead,
Yeah.
right? Like, people are awful. And the media didn't help
Yeah.
with this. This is the part that I am more upset about,
And
is that the media,
and the
what they
media
did.
was lightweight then. Now it's like
Mm-hmm.
in your face, in your door, on your phone, 24/7 a day.
Yes, 24/7 media coverage. This was you got your news at noon, 6, and 10, and you had your radio on the air hour, you had your newspaper
Hmm.
articles. Like, you you didn't get your news the same way. You
Yeah.
tuned in at 6 over the supper and you watched the news. But he had a interview where, beforehand, he was pretty much a celebrity. He was like, you're one of your first, this is what they call the OJ Simpson trial before OJ Simpson. Um
Oklahoma.
yeah. So they had him like, oh, who would you vote for? Like, you couldn't ask questions about the trial, so none of the questions were asked about the trial during that thing. It was all just like, to see him as a human interview.
Yeah.
But that made it difficult for the families, because back then they didn't care about the reflection of what happened with families. You didn't even have discussions with families. The only thing we have is one news anchor talked to Denise's mom during the trial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and some things outside the trial. But he got
So
his
let
own
me
like
see.
special interview time, talk about if who we'd vote for. You know,
All
that's
that good
that's
stuff.
bullshit.
Yeah.
You
I agree with
know,
that 100%.
we have a different
Question.
outlook now.
The polygraph, right? You said
Hmm.
that there was one that she took the polygraph and she lied on the polygraph. Was that the girl that said that her brother and his two friends were the one that did it, or that
No,
was the case, right? That wasn't them.
different person. So this is Joyce Payne. Joyce Payne was the one that said that she saw Bill Stevens there and implicated him at the scene
Gotcha.
and gave that information. And they brought her to testify, actually, to show that they did have other people they were suspecting but weren't focusing on, because it was easier for them to focus on Jean Leroy Hart,
Yeah.
which, to me, that's not out of the wheelhouse, right? But what they're trying to do is show, okay, what about these other people? They do have other suspects, but Jean Leroy Hart is still the top of the list.
And
Um,
honestly, I feel like it's all because two reasons. One, he's indigenous, and number two, his rap sheet, number one word that says it is rape. Is right
right,
there on that. So it's very,
right.
very quick to grab somebody like that to have them on
Exactly.
top of the list.
And that's where in the trial, that's the main evidence they kind of stick with, is that,
Hmm.
okay, look at the MO. And this is also what Mike Reed is looking at. He's reenacted the scenes of the crimes. He's walked out, he's done the pacing. He's living and breathing the case, right? And he also still does believe it's Jean Leroy Hart. Um and he's the current investigating officer for the Locust Grove detachment and the sheriff of that town. Um but it's still open. It's not closed. So that means they're still looking at evidence. But I'll get into that. But the fact of the matter is that, um, when it came to uh, the 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 evidence, right, against him, that was just too much circumstantial,
Yeah.
and that's what the they knew that. The lawyers knew that. So that's why they brought up Joyce Payne, who had stated, this there, because there's obviously other people they're looking at. Why aren't they looking at them? Why are they so hard pressed on G. Leroy Hart? Is the real murderer still out there? All of this is
Yeah.
circumstantial. We don't even have a fingerprint that is, enough evidence, right? It's
Yeah. A
inconclusive.
partial
It's a
don't
partial.
speaking work. And then
Yeah.
the DNA to test it 20 years later is still, they
Yeah,
say
which I want
open
to get.
potential.
I do want to get into that. I want to get into that so much. We'll get into that. We're totally going to get into that. But so the verdict came down on March 31st, 1979. Uh, and really, I'm going to go back to this person. I'm going to get her name quickly. Sorry, I just have to flip through my notes. Leela Ramsey. She was one of six. She shows up in both the PBS video and is talked about um, in the People, I believe the People one or the one, the blog post, one or the other.
The people one. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's definitely on the people one.
So Leela Ramsey is one of the six jurors that convicted. Now she said, or not convicted, that said not guilty. In her words, she thought the evidence was sloppy, just like Macy. And it did feel like there was manufactured evidence. She quoted stating she remembers them asking the police officer there the night that Jean Leroy Hart was arrested, being asked if any photos were taken. They said no. And then they're presented with trophy photos of Jean Leroy Hart walking in with the police into the police detachment. So,
Yep.
in the same breath, he's lying. So, they did not trust the authorities that they were making proper decisions. Yeah,
Oh,
so him escaping
wow.
was a known thing around the town. They already knew he was, and they already knew he did crime, but they just didn't. And I don't know how far they went with the jury selection outside of town. I think they may have gone, because I do think Leela wasn't from the town and was looking at it objectively. She said that it seemed like, in direct quote, I'm saying not guilty. She said, direct quote,
Mhm.
I'm not saying not guilty. The thought was more that it might have been more than one person.
Yeah,
And
I
that they
agree with that
felt that
100%.
they never heard anything that was conclusive, and it felt like he was framed. And that's what she had said during the PBS video. So that's how it was coming across to the jury, that they didn't have very conclusive evidence, sloppy gathering, felt like there might have been framing going on. Anybody that touched it seemed like they were in for their own gain. Again, I think the only one that didn't have anything to gain from was Harvey Pratt,
Yeah,
who's just being a good cop.
protecting his
Obvious,
community.
yep, protected his community. Obviously, the sheriff had something to gain because this was the one guy that sneaked away from him twice under his nose.
He had to prove himself.
Oh
He
yeah,
had no
his job was
choice.
on the line. He gets voted in, right? Same with the DA. He has something in for himself. He had a book deal already lined up. Um, so it just felt like this wasn't a trial. This was opportunistic. And I think
Yep.
that's why it only took them 5 hours on March 31st to come back with not guilty on all four counts or all three counts. Um, Harvey Pratt said that he couldn't believe it. He's like, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I'm not hanging around. I think that was a direct quote. I think that's because of all this, of all the work he did, that I think he was disgusted with I don't think he's going to talk shit about his people, but I think he was just disgusted by everything. I think
No,
he was
yeah,
just
I agree.
disgusted. There's no justice. He's everybody outside of everything he did just shit the bed royally. And even if he was the guy, it's like, what? I'm out of here.
Me
Fuck
too.
this. Right?
Yeah, for real.
Like, even if he
Oh
was the
man.
guy, they shit the bed so badly, it would have been so hard for them to convict and say not guilty
And you be
or
guys
guilty.
shocked. Guys, you'll be shocked. So many docs that I've watched that just cops just like destroyed the whole scene, the whole
Yep.
evidence, everything
Just
because
sloppy.
either they want to be the first one to take the picture, they want to be the
Mm-hmm.
first ones to solve the
The
case. They,
notoriety.
oh my goodness, it's the sloppiness. And the thing is like, you want the right person to get caught. You want justice for these
Mm-hmm.
girls. And what it
Exactly.
was been done to these girls. You want that justice, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you're like, what is the circus? Why are you guys not
Right?
focusing anymore on the
Because,
girls? What happened?
exactly, this is a circus. Even the media, it's a circus. There's three
Sorry.
heinous crimes that happened here against three young children. Brutal. right? You know, the stuff that
Mhm.
nightmares are made of. That's why
That's what it
I
is right
think
there.
pop culture, if you knew anything about it, and that's why stuff like Sleepaway Camp and the Friday the
Yeah,
13th movies made such an impact on us, is because it is a time of innocence and we can all relate to this innocent thing that somehow is viscerally acted upon you, right? That happened to these three girls. Like, I don't,
yeah.
like, it's so, so imagine just going through that whole court thing and these poor families that are just like, why are we not, you know, why are they too focused on themselves? And why is this whole community so focused on themselves rather than, you know,
The girls,
the girls?
the
And
part, yes,
having empathy
honestly,
for the crime that happened, even if it wasn't Jean Leroy Hart. But
someone is out there,
yeah. And that's the thing.
and
Someone knows something, you know what I mean?
someone knows
Like,
something. Because at
that
the
whole
end of the
community
day,
knows something.
that whole community, exactly, that whole community knows something because this person knew that he had to sneak up on three
Yeah.
sleeping girls, and he
Yes.
had to stop the batteries from rattling. He had
Yes.
to dim the light from the flashlight. He had to wake up the counselors that's up the hill.
Yeah.
He it was
Yes.
so thoughtfully planned out.
And this is where you get into how could a person not be local?
Yeah.
So then that's
Mm.
where I've come into, like, now that we know all this stuff of like his shit, like there's still the ongoing investigation. Mike Reed is still looking into everything. In 2003 or 1980s, they did a semen test that came back
Yeah,
with
1989. Yeah, it came
yeah,
back. So then they did another one 20 years later after the 1989, and it then came back a
yes,
potential match to Heart.
yes. And in
Um,
2013, they also went through every stitch and found a hair that did have follicle uh residue. Again, we are dealing with breakdown, right? And they
yeah, so
did
many years.
find a partial match to Heart. All the other people have no match. Now, that's where I want to get into juicy bits. Now, partial match. Let's talk about partial match. Do you know anything about partial match, Macy?
It could be one. It could be the smallest thing, and they'll say is a part.
Yeah.
It could
So,
be negative point 8%, and it's a partial match.
yeah. So the partial match on this, for a partial match to be considered for something, and what happened with this DNA is that 3 out of 5 markers match Jean Leroy Hart. So it can only be considered a partial match of 3 of 5 like out of certain markers. So like you said, a partial match can be a small percentage. 3 out of 5 markers came back Jean Leroy Hart. Does anybody understand 23 and Me? An S? Okay, let's get into it. So, uh, matches go based on certain things based on your lineage in your DNA. So you're going to have, uh, based on, if you look at it, I think it's like over 50 or 75% will be parents. Siblings and close things will be a 50. Ah, thanks for the raid, Lady Yukio. Hello, we're talking we're talking about DNA, and we're talking about the Girl Scout murders, Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. Thank you. Thank you, Fire Riku,
Yay!
for the follow. I hope you had a great stream. Sorry, I'm going to do a shout out just
Go on ahead.
quickly. Um, thank you for joining me. How was Spooktober? Um, hello, Shovelcat. Oh, thank you for the follow. Yes, we're doing talk show. I'm thinking we played Dale and Dawson, were you, or was that yesterday? I can't remember. But yeah, we are. Oh my gosh, Jimmy, you haven't followed me, Jimmy. We're just getting into
Bum bum bum.
bum bum bum. We're getting into the after the trial of Jean Leroy Hart or the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders, and in 2013, and 19, what was it, 1989, Macy? They found the
Yes,
DNA. Yeah. So
1989.
that came back with 3 out of 5 markers with Jean
Hmm.
Leroy Hart as matching. Now, this is where we're talking about if anybody knows stuff about DNA. Um, Even my family at one time was like, we should do a 23andMe. I was like, yeah, so, if anybody in our family kills anybody, we can find them. Because now people can actually go and ask 23andMe for evidence if they've
All the
got
good stuff.
partial markers, which is what we're getting into. So your partial markers, I believe 75% is direct connect to parents,
Yeah.
or almost 100, something like that. When you have like about 50 or something, it is somebody that is a direct relation. So siblings, first relations, that kind of thing, aunts and uncles, like that kind of thing, or siblings or whatever. 25% gets into aunts, uncles, nieces, cousin, or whatever. Now, we just talked about how indigenous communities have huge families. Then they're
Hmm.
all local in this community. Someone knows something.
Yep.
3 out of 5 markers match Jean Leroy Hart from evidence taken in 2013. That to me says that Jean Leroy Hart, yes, is connected to these murders, but he is not the murderer. A family
Yep.
member is.
Yep. Yep. I
I think
agree.
we have a first cousin, some sort of cousin,
Somebody in
relation,
there.
a relation within that community of Awoka that has committed the murders.
And I can remember then they get this community look out for each other.
Yeah.
This person that is involved in the murder might have done something a, a few times before, but they kept it within the community, kept it
Mm-hmm.
hush because they don't want that bad stigma, that bad look, that bad vibes going to
Yes.
their community. So yeah, that partial marker, yeah, it
Yeah.
there's something that has to do with heart, but it's not heart direct. It's
Yeah.
somebody in heart's family.
Yes. So I do think that Hart was um I do think that Hart is connected, but he isn't connected in the way that the police made him out to be. Cuz
Hmm.
why would a man that is now caught serve as, potentially, he's going to go back to jail for a very long time. He's never going to get out. Why would he not just say he's guilty and give closure?
Yeah,
Because he admitted guilt before. This isn't something
yeah.
that he hasn't done. He admitted he
It's like
did the crimes before. Even if he
how
thought he
much
was going to
more
get a
can you
lighter
add?
sentence, he knew
What's gonna make a difference?
right, there's no difference. And that's what we do see it a lot in these kind of crimes, is that when you're finally caught and you're caught, they admit to more because
Yep.
there is no difference. This is a new practice, Slanesh, that you can get a warrant with DNA on file to see from places like 23andMe and Ancestry.com to see if you find any markers. There's actually a case in Seattle where they actually finally got the guy because of a 23andMe DNA
Oh my
run
God, you read that?
test. Yeah.
I
This
read
is a
about that the other
new,
day.
very new thing. I think it's only started in the last 4 years that people
Yeah. Hmm.
are now
The
using
23
markers
me.
because at 3 to 5, it's really, really new, and sometimes it's dismissible in court. But if
Yeah,
we
because
anybody now, the
soon
more
it
we
won't be.
know, yeah, exactly. It's the same thing as, to me, we have something here called a Mr. Big sting. I think they
What? What?
work. Oh, girl, we're going to talk about Mr. Big stings. There's actually a murder case here in
Mr.
my
Big
hometown
Sting.
that was solved based on a Mr. Big sting.
I mean, but
Lots
did you
of
watch Sex in the City though?
oh, a Mr. Big
So,
sting.
you're Mr.
Um,
Big.
yeah. So you have to have enough evidence to, start going around and asking family members, "Hey, can we or swab the inside of your cheek?" But I don't think that's on that out of that. But the thing is that someone within the community would know something. That person could easily be dead already. We're looking back again, 1977, with pre-existing heart conditions that we do know of because Jean Leroy Hart
Who's in the
himself,
family?
yeah, in the
And his
family,
brother.
yeah, and his brother just passed away. So
Yeah.
looking at that 3 to 5 markers, that is why I went and said, okay, how old was the son during the time of this
Oh,
murder?
you're right.
Because he
10.
shared so many, because he only was around 10 or 11.
Oh,
So
yeah.
too young to commit any sort of crime like this.
No.
And another reason why I don't believe
Again,
it was Jean Leroy Hart. Now, there's another thing. I know this is going to sound bad. I don't want it to sound bad. This is just statistically. In Indigenous communities, there is a known lot of trauma that occurs or can occur based on systemic violence of sexual assault. So it
Oh,
isn't outside um, the fact that there's a possibility that this is somebody with a lot of pent up rage that did know or was back in the community that summer. They had to know the layout of the conditions of what that tent was. They did say that they rifled through plate like purses and took little trophies or moved them. We know that the girl's glasses were moved. The girl that found them's glasses were moved. Um,
yeah,
they were outside the tent. So he, during that storm, was rifling through tents. He was going through tents. We know that because all of them were in a
yeah,
storm. In the middle of all this, that storm happened in Oklahoma, that they were all inside the mess hall singing songs and waiting for the storm to pass. So we know he was in that location. This is where we get back to that whole like creepy horror movie stuff, right? Um, that he could easily have been stalking them. Jason or Freddy the 13th, like Friday the 13th, Mike Myers or Jason would have done, right? Um, so he was looking for stuff. He was looking for a victim. He knew what he was going to do. He knew when camp started because this is the first night of the camp starting. Nobody had been there yet. This is the first week of the first night. So he knows when camp is starting, right? Has to be
Mhm.
local. Has to be local.
I think it has to be local. I honestly do believe it's local.
I do too. I don't know
I
that it's
believe
Leroy Hart.
no. I feel like he's someone related to him. I feel like
Hmm.
there's someone in his family for sure, but I don't believe that it's him directly.
Yeah. They even said they found a 11 and a half size footprint in the blood, and Jean Leroy Hart's footprint is 9.5. So his
Mhm.
footprint did not match.
Not so
Um,
much.
there's just so much other circumstantial thing. Um, and I do think that Mike Reed is doing a good job at keeping this case open and fresh. The
Keep it
sheriff in the
alive.
third
Yeah.
town. I think he's dedicated and thoughtful to it. But there's a reason why it's still open and why he's not just saying, okay, I'm not going to look at it anymore. Is because there is too much to still look at. And I
Yeah.
do think that someone in the community does know something, especially since we have the 3 to 5 markers. Now, this is again just new evidence within the last 4 years that we do know about more about DNA. DNA, even back in 2013, was not as like we knew about it. I mean, we had CSI going on, like, who are
Yeah.
you? Like, like everyone was loving that shit. But DNA has made leaps and bounds even since
Leaps
then.
and bounds.
So I do think that, again, and the other part of it is this is what I'd like to pose, like, Macy. If you are the kind of person that lives that close to the camp that would do something like that, why wait 4 years?
Yeah.
You've
Why wait
been,
4 years?
why
Why
wait?
do it on the first night?
Yeah.
You
Why
know,
wait?
it's
That's a pretty big step. I know he did do what he did before, which was the rape of those women, right? And he did
yeah,
the other thing too, the MO is that he also bound them to a tree and sodomized those women, raped those women, the pregnant women. But I think it's going to sound so bad. I don't want it to sound bad, but it it makes it easier to not look at them,
yeah,
which I think was part of it. Uh, and I also think it was a thing that it would be really hard to have to control 2 women while you're not tying them just face to face to a tree.
exactly. And I
It's
feel like
it's
this person, I I feel like when the girls, if the girls, because it happens
yeah.
so quickly when they're asleep, but once who was Denise was the last one, right? Denise had
Denise was the one
continued the
that
one
was assaulted and strangled. Yeah.
strangled. Yeah, I feel like was she knew the face.
I think so. And
I
that's the thing is that they said that they think that they knew the people that were doing it. Now, Denise was from
Yeah.
Tulsa who came out and didn't want to go. And she even wrote a letter to her mom that night said, I don't want to be here, which is the heartbreaking thing about
As a
it.
parent, yeah, man,
Yeah.
that would break my
So
heart.
I honestly, so when it comes down to here, the jury thinks that it was more than one person. I'm going to think this is where maybe Macy and I differ a little bit. I do think it was one person. I think it was calculatedly one person. I think it was one person that knew exactly that they were going to go through the back entrance of that tent.
Yep.
I don't think Denise was selected like Mike Reed thinks. I think Denise was an opportunity. Wrong place, wrong time. I
Yeah.
think she was taken because she looked the most mature, maybe, but I
Yeah,
think it was
she was the oldest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she was the middle-aged one. But I think, okay, this is going to sound so bad. This is where I hate when it's, this is my anthropology brain and forensic things. So I can play out exactly in my brain. If you're coming in through the back of the tent with a hammer, you're going to take your predominant swing with your one arm against whoever's in that bed indiscriminately. Turn around and do that to the next one indiscriminately, and then grab the one closest to the front.
Yeah.
That is the quickest and easiest way. And then quickly wrap a
The
rope
cord
around
around
their
her.
neck in
Yeah.
a swing type motion, much like hog tying a cow. Um, I know that sounds awful, but the
And
easiest
then like
calculated
all of
way
this
is
is
that,
happening and it's dark.
yep,
It's a small space.
you're
It's a
already
tent.
sleeping, you just hear noises, and suddenly there's something around your throat. It was mainly, yeah, exactly. All you have is a pinhole of light, so you have to know the layout. You had to scope out the location and know your ins and outs, your accesses, and that's why you knew where that tree was, because that tree was your
Yeah.
guiding point of how to leave the camp. Whether or not
Yeah,
he
this
had
person knew
planned
it.
to take everything with him until what's her name? I think her name was Carla. Heard it. I think
Yeah.
that's why they were left there, or you would not have found any bodies.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you 100% on that. I agree that if if she didn't come out the tent, if she didn't
Yeah,
come out herself to check, I don't think the girls would have been there.
I don't think so
I don't
either.
think they were together in one place to be carted, like to be dragged somewhere else, to
Yeah,
be taken. I 100% agree with that.
I think that was the whole thing. I don't even think that Denise would have died there. I think Denise would have been taken for a bit.
Yeah.
Um, and I
And the
think
whole point
that's,
that her body was warm when
yeah,
they came, that breaks my heart because
yeah. That means
she could
had
have
passed
had.
away maybe 4 hours sooner, three
Yep.
hours sooner.
And the question is that is it 4 hours, 3 hours sooner that the cops since the girl found her, or since the cops got there because
Yeah,
they never checked her
that's
pulse?
it would have been from when the ER nurse touched and checked her pulse because he tried to bring her back to an extent because he's
Yeah.
the one that ran out. He didn't touch the ones in the sleeping bags. He just saw that girl and
Hmm.
instantly just like went to, you know, that's when you just are in your go mode, your training kicks in, right? So he knew she was warm to the touch, um, vitals, all that kind of stuff. Probably looked at her, knew she'd already passed, that kind of thing. And we know that she died from the strangulation. So either he wanted her to be quiet because Carla did come outside, so he
Yeah,
tightened
that
the rope.
oh yeah, I see what
Eh,
you're saying.
yeah,
And just to shut, just yeah.
like kept like if you have like I said, you'd have it. You go around the neck, and you
Hmm.
have it in both hands, right? And you just quickly wrap around 3 times and you pull,
Yeah.
like hog tying a calf.
Pakistan, yeah.
So I think that's
Oh,
again when you hear that, that screams rural. Like not your city kid. I'm not going to sound this bad, but your city kid doesn't know that shit. Doesn't know this type of stuff. And
yeah.
why does one person go from that? Is this a first time offense? Has he been doing that kind of stuff? Was there rage? It's so calculated, but then
Yeah.
everything seems so planted. And no, there's
at the
not
same
guards
time.
or at the thing because this is a time before that. Again, like this is an age of innocence. I don't know one camp that even now has guards. I don't know
Yeah.
one camp.
I see cameras here and there, but
Cameras.
I don't see them having a person walking around on night shift to make
No.
sure that the
No.
camp is secured.
No, like we didn't like we had uh like in the one camp we had like people that would get up during the night and do walkabouts like every
Hmm.
but that was dedicated to like certain adults. Mike Reed also brings up a very, very other significant thing that I think is something that he hit the nail on the head on why this is premeditated. And used to freak me out when I was at camp. But why not just, if he just was opportunistic, it wasn't planned out, didn't know the area, all that other kind of stuff, and that's why he's kind of set on it, someone local. That's why we know someone knows something in this town. Why not just hang out by the bathrooms?
Oh, true. Yeah,
Why not just hang out? Kids gotta go pee during the night. Why
yeah.
not just hang out by the bathroom? And all those bathrooms are always, there's always a dark side to every outhouse, every latrine.
Everyone.
There's always
Yeah.
a dark side. It's so easy as you're walking out. I remember being at camp because I was scared of the dark. I'm still scared of the dark. I play Phasma with Macy. She knows I'm scared of the dark. Uh, that I'd have to go to the bathroom and I would peek my head out, look both ways, and run from the werewolf in the night that could have been in those bushes or hiding out. And I think that's a huge fear for, just kids after
Just
the
kids in
whole,
general.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you watch
Uh,
scary movies back in the 80s and 90s, that was legit fear of the man with the knife that lived in the
yo,
woods.
on the real,
Like,
even
we're
Erica
telling
says it here.
ghost
She
story,
says,
yeah.
yeah, Erica says this case honestly reminds me of the alphabet murder, especially due to
Yes.
the age range and the details. It's very true.
Yeah.
Telling you
So
these connections is,
yeah. So like it's not like it it's not like if this is going to sound so bad, but if you're looking just for anybody and anyone will do, and you're looking just to do the act and get away, why not just, and it's just about the rape, right?
yeah.
Because rape and murder are two separate things. I know this sounds really bad, but they are, you know, to an extent. Why not just why not just go and wait by the bathrooms? And you could easily do the same type of rope thing and drag them off from there. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it feels so much more calculated. I think that's why Mike Reed thinks that it's somebody that picked Denise.
Mhm.
I think it was just location because he needed to take his time for his plan. And that camp tent was the furthest away for his plan.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. Because again, you look at the area, yo,
yeah,
it's a way, it's towards the end, like it's away, and then when you see where the bodies were, like that's a very dark, secluded little space that
yeah,
he was at, that the girls were at. It
yeah.
really was.
And I'm going to say I found the name of the area. This is the Cooks and Heels. So if you want to look up the history of the Cooks and Heels or Hills, you'll know, you know, who and what went down in the Cooks and Hills back to Prohibition. So there's
Mm.
there's like a history of certain things there. But I mean, if you're in the Cooks and Hills, if you're near that camp, I think you just would have to know. And I don't know. The only thing that throws me off to think the only reason why I think it's someone local is because we have 3 to 5 DNA matches, and
Hmm.
because of that it's not just a person that was squatting there before the camp started. Um, is that uh it just how it was for the layout of the land and how it was so ritualized. The only thing I can think of is why is it so ritualized if this seems like a first murder in the area?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that really is my biggest question mark is that this is a really extreme, violent, calculated for a first time murders usually, to a degree is pretty sloppy. And especially since
Hmm.
in 1977 when we're looking at, certain cases it's not like even police detachments were talking to each other. They really still don't. But we know
They
that
still
some of
don't.
the stuff that happened during that time, you're beginning stuff, outside torturing cats, because we don't fuck with cats.
Don't fuck
Um,
with it.
is
Well,
is
any
yeah,
pet, okay?
exactly. Is that this seems so meticulous. Like they know they like how long did a person have to, the violent scene, the scene was violent inside the tent, right? They just
Yeah.
said there was blood everywhere.
Every
Um,
scene is blood everywhere, is a messy freaking scene, and is no freaking fingerprints.
yeah,
I'm sorry, it just blows my fucking
exactly.
mind.
To me, they only got a partial. So who was manhandling that flashlight? And they fucked up because
Yeah.
there was a ton of fingerprints all over it. But then, why isn't there any partials or any fingerprints inside that cave on those photos or whatever to implicate Jean Leroy Hart? I mean, his finger. Why do you have to go to the fucking paper to be like, do you know these women? Because one was a wedding photo.
Hmm.
His fingerprints are on fucking file.
And still.
And still, like he will be fingerprinted with his fingerprints on file because he's been incarcerated.
Hmm.
He's
And
been
remember
guilty of
seeing
other things.
the cave, they were so thing about it. They were like, it was an article that I read that they were like, oh, he was hiding out there, this monster, this like he was there for days, or he's been living in this cave.
Yeah.
No DNA of this man in a fucking cave besides
Right.
what was found there. These
Yeah.
specific items were found there.
Yeah. And
Where's the rest of the
the
DNA
thing
though?
is that we don't, even with it not even thinking of DNA, where is clothing that matched Jean Leroy Hart in this
Anything.
location? Where is fingerprints that match Leroy Hart in this location? Why did they have to ask the public who those photos belonged to when the sheriff already
Hmm.
knew who was implicated on those photos? Because he's the lead
Because
investigator.
not
Um,
suspect. Bullshit is suspect.
all of it's suspect. And then just two random squirrel hunters are just like, yeah, yo, after so many people 3 days before scoured the entire place. Now this is again a hop, skip, and a throw from the camp, Jean Leroy Mother's house. Literally borders it. So how did they miss that? But 3 days later, they're like, oh yeah, two squirrel trappers went and saw something suspicious over yonder. You know,
And that's it.
you never checked it before, or you didn't know about that, right?
Yeah.
Would it look too suspicious if you went there first thing to be like, okay, let's check to see if there's any. We know there's this cellar because we know who Jean Leroy Hart is. We know there's a cellar right there. They say there's crooks and crannies and coves and caves all throughout there. They obviously would have checked the known ones. So why 3 days later do you then find shit inside it? That's where it gets a little like, But the
Because
markers indicate, obviously, because the hair and I'm a big, the hair and the semen are the big, things.
yeah.
The fact that 3 out of 5 markers are a match in 2013 tells me that, this is where honestly Mike Reed should go, is he should actually subpoena a warrant for 23andMe and see if they
100%.
get higher marker matches, like a
Yeah. I mean,
daughter
it's
or a
there.
son, and that would
Yeah, the work is
instantly
done.
implicate it. But
Yeah,
this
the
is
work
such a
is
new
done.
thing.
They don't have to get new DNA. They don't have to do
Nope.
any of that. Everything's already there.
Yep.
And they should go there. There's a case, um the next case I want to talk to you about on our next podcast.
Ugh.
um it is also what helped them find the suspect is through getting a warrant out, and to get because ancestry they used,
Yeah,
and
ancestry.
they found, yeah, they found a list of potential people, and it went down the list, and they freaking found the killer.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's
possible.
like
Like,
it should
there's
be used.
people out there that have been tried, and the case is closed because of using Ancestry or 23andMe or whatever it might be, because we know that you can't change that. So the 3 out of 5
Mhm.
markers still, I think, is like, I understand why they say that's not enough to say it's Jean Lee Hart. Oh, thank you for the raid,
Yay,
uh,
yay, 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 yay.
yay, yay, welcome Raiders. We're talking about the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. We're just kind of coming to the end of it on our thoughts and theories. We do think that there's someone in the community that committed these atrocities, might still even be in that community, based on the
100%.
3 out of 5 DNA markers that were discovered.
Yeah, I don't
Yay,
believe
thank you
Hart.
for the follow.
I don't believe Hart is the killer. I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe that, but I do believe it's somebody that knows the community very well, knows the schedule
Yes.
of the campers, knows the layout of the camp, and yeah, a sneaky, sneaky fuck. And I think
Yes,
this person is still out there,
I believe
and these
so.
poor girls,
Or he
he's,
took it to his grave, right? Because it's,
or he took
again,
it
it
to
is
his grave.
1977, so he could have passed by now. He could still be alive. Could have passed, right? I'm not.
Hmm.
1977 wasn't a lot long ago, but these people are getting up in age. We know there's a history of heart conditions. There's lots of history of illness that can go through community like that. Um, you know, so like we just had COVID even. Like, we
Yeah,
don't fucking know.
that's very true.
Um so, and indigenous communities were susceptible to COVID. Like, there's lots of things
Yeah,
that but I do
gotta
think
play it out.
that my biggest other thing too was that, why not just say you're guilty if you know you're going to prison? I
Yeah.
I know there's other implications, like, well, you don't want to say you did things to children if you're going to go to prison. But I think,
Hmm.
you know, based around, I just don't think he wanted to be associated with that. I don't think he was smart enough not to admit his guilt, because he admitted his guilt the first time. I don't think
Yeah.
he would have thought, oh, anything different's going to happen. He knows he's going to go back to jail for a really long fucking time. Um,
I mean, 300 years,
yeah,
300 years, and a man died 2 months after his sentencing. So,
yeah,
it wasn't phasing him the time being there. What
no,
was phasing him is being called uh,
yeah,
a
being called
rapist
a
for
rapist of
children.
children. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the thing that was, I don't want to say that I did it because I didn't do it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I don't think
Because
it
he's
was
a
even one of
monster of that
those.
person doesn't mean
Yeah,
that he did the crime. It sucks, man, and it's that he passed. Man, that's just
yeah.
like. But I really do hope they keep this alive, like the
Mhm.
case. This is one of the cold cases
Yeah.
that I see that like I'm hoping that one day they're like, oh, this new found way of doing
Yes.
DNA, and then bam, we got something.
Yeah. When I do think, because the agency for missing and murdered children is directly attached, I think the
Hmm.
amount of dedication that Laura Lee Farmer, one of the victims' families, has. I mean, her dad was a doctor in the community. You know, like, he was an ER doctor. So I think they're willing to invest the time, energy, and not letting it up because of their big family. Um, I think that I would love to see, like you said, like, this is so open, and it's still. I think Mike Reid is going to drop it. I think it's going to be one of those things that he wants to retire on, and he's young.
Yeah.
He's like our age, maybe a bit older, but he's not a young guy. He's got young kids the same age right now that he's taken to school. So I do feel like this is one of those cases that can be solved with future, like he even fundraised for forensic evidence outside the system because there was so much evidence to process. Like, he fundraised 30 grand to send away evidence on his own. Like, I don't think a cop would do that unless they're deeply committed to trying to actually resolve it. And the fact that
Yeah.
he hasn't, like, he's like, yeah, everything points to Jean Leroy Hart, but he hasn't said that that's where it ends for him.
Hmm.
So that makes me wonder that he can't say everything. He just can say the only thing that doesn't everybody's eradicated or by the DNA, the only one that hasn't been has been G. Leroy Hart. That did not say that he believes he did the deed. It only
Hmm.
says that the DNA points back to Jean Leroy Hart. and that's all he can say because it's an open investigation. I think he did come out and ABC did a lot of this stuff and how much he's doing it because I think he knows that something or someone within the community might have information. I think he's
Yeah.
playing on the empathy of the community to be like, yo, let's, how can you drive past this place every day and not think about it? You grew up here. I grew up here. Why don't we want to have this done and put to bed, right? Same with Kristen Chenoweth, like saying that she thinks about it all the time. That could have been her, you know?
I don't even, because she was right there.
She was right there.
She was right there.
She's from
And
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, which is like right around that area.
and because of her, it's a good chance because of her that those bodies were still there and was able to be recovered and able to be, the families were
Yeah.
able to give them a proper funeral. And I really do think it was because of her
Yeah.
brave action just to step
Carla?
out of her tent,
Oh my God,
go out.
yeah. That I
Honestly, makes me so.
just, there's like some like crazy to me small champions of this entire thing,
Yeah,
like
she's
that
one of them
are
for
honest,
sure.
and she's definitely one of them.
A
You
hundred
know,
percent. Yep.
like, I hope like there's like you hope that the universe comes around for certain people, and I really like hope that it
I
comes around
hope
for her.
so. I really do. I hope so. She needs peace in her life, and that's one
Exactly.
of them.
Yeah, like the family needs it, the Carla needs it. I even think Harvey Pratt, the guy
He needs
that
that too.
he needs that too. He needs that, right? Cuz I think he
A
also
hundred
understands
percent.
his community,
He
It's
was
his
only
community
looking out for the
too.
best for his community. He was trying to make sure that his community was being taken advantage of from the
Exactly.
local officials and a local um
Yeah.
the sheriff's department because again they're real quick
Mhm.
to point fingers at the indigenous people out of everything.
Yeah.
Anything that happens is like, well, these people.
Yeah. I do feel
Mm,
like him being the one that was called out there, whether or not it was a tactical move on OBSI's part, is serendipitous. Like
mm,
it's, the fact that it was so involved. He wished it wasn't going to be an indigenous person. Like he was grassroots connected to all of it, you know? And I think, knowing what he knows and what happened and just everything that went down, I think he needs closure, Carla needs closure, Mike Reed needs closure, and the families need the closure.
yeah,
Um, I think one of the Michelle's family doesn't even talk about it. That I haven't seen any information come forward through interviews, anything about Michelle Guzman's family wanting to discuss what happened to their daughter at all. It's the
don't
I
blame them.
think it's like Laura Lee Farmer's parents and
Hmm.
um Denise's, who unfortunately, being a nurse and having like to deal with all that on top of it. I just so much. Thank you, Yord. Yes, this is my podcast setup. I wanted Macy to be in here behind it too. She's got a teacup. That's why her tea extra teacups there because we're talking the tea on crime. Uh,
I'm invisible. You can't see me,
yeah,
but I'm there.
she's so there. My foogies weren't working. Um, but yeah, I really like talking about this case, and I feel like I think it's one that's just kind of under the radar. Honestly, I didn't know about it too until uh I was just looking for true crime on Netflix and saw that, and I was like, "Oh my God." And I
Yeah.
deep dived into it, and it's after I learned about it, um it resonates in my brain. That's why when we were playing Phasmo, I was like, this just reminds me of the Oklahoma Girl Scout camp. And
The campgrounds. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
the campground
That
one.
this is a good case. This is a good case to continue to keep
Mhm.
on top of. I'll definitely keep this on my radar to make sure to see if anything new comes up
It would be
because it is
wonderful if we were like talking about this and then like a year later we could do an update episode and we're just like,
update.
yo!
Yes. I found the podcast that way. I found the podcast on the Murtaugh murders
Oh, the
on
Murdoch, yeah?
Yeah, I found the podcast, I say 3 years ago, Mabs. And
Mm.
she's a local girl. She was fresh. She was just giving us the day-to-day stuff. And while she was reporting her stuff, other crimes were happening in the town by the same family. And she was like, okay, guys,
Fuck,
this is
man.
what's happening. And then the arrests started happening. And then the case. So I followed this one podcaster the whole freaking journey of finding bodies, finding DNA, finding evidence, finding everything. And I loved it. It was just like, girl, you gave me everything I wanted
Mm-hmm.
in my podcast.
Right? Everything. Absolutely
Everything.
everything. Oh my
But
gosh.
this right here was Map's case, 120,000%. Maps went in and got all the real true information for us, and I appreciate that from you, girl.
Aw.
And your ADHD mind that works like mine. Um,
Yes.
but to our next episode, I'm gonna have Erica on, and
Yeah.
we're gonna do more homework. Hopefully, maybe next week, if you guys are available, we will try again next week. I want to go and do Into the Fire, the Lost Daughter.
Oh.
I want to go into that one with you guys. So I'm gonna send you the links. I'm gonna send
Yeah.
you articles. I'm gonna send you podcasts because I have been doing deep dive on this one.
Hell yeah.
So we'll
I'm
be
down for
prepared.
it. I will get all
Um,
my notebooks ready.
yeah, I will have more than 13 pages maps front and back.
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
can't wait. Oh my God. I can't wait. I can't wait for you to lead the episode on this. I'm sorry if I kind of started leading into stuff. I was just like, oh my God, I just got to go
No,
down this turkey trail.
again, I knew that I would love to do a podcast with you, and I see the world has seen proven why I was very happy to do this with you today. You made it very interesting. You gave me some fun facts, and I can see that our anthropology minds really do work alike.
Oh,
So
yeah, definitely. We got the gears moving totally. This was just
can't
so
wait.
much fun. I enjoyed talking crime with you so much. I hope everybody else did too.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Any points, any like pointers,
Yes.
anything you want to see some graphs, you want to see some PowerPoints, I could do that too.
Hell yeah.
So let me know. But if my spooky friends, let's say by the Mabs and her peeps,
Yes.
and we will see you guys for our podcast maybe next week. We're gonna try our best.
Yep.
But tomorrow I'll be streaming Evil Within 2 for the first time. So if you want to hear me scream and
Hell
cry,
yeah.
please follow me, and we will be
Yes.
doing that tomorrow. And maybe Matt could be as a my second person, and I could scare her too.
Oh my
So
gosh.
let's see. Oh my
It's
gosh.
it's possible. I might be too nervous to do that, but we'll see. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely go
my man.
give Beetlejuice88 a follow. She's amazing. I would love to get her to be affiliate. She's so wonderful.
I'm
She's been
trying.
a long friend for a while. Um, so it would be lovely for you guys to go and support her. And I look forward to talking to crime with you in the future, Macy.
Yay, yay. Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody. Bye for now.